Section 21. Combined with his 5-in-a-row simultaneous multicasting, his casting speed could even overwhelm reverse magic, making it easy to rival the magic masters. This was only the base form of Kamen Rider Wizard. If Gao Li used endless style, he could confidently tell the assembled masters, "Come at me, I'll take on 10 of you." As Gao Li thought this, Geiwani had already reluctantly yielded. He acknowledged Gao Li's strength, but as a dignified reverse magic master, he would not be cowed. Still, what if that strength were multiplied tenfold? Victory and defeat are common in war. Whether we win or lose is a small matter. What matters is if my daughter gets hurt in the aftermath. For today, I'll let this boy off, Geiwani said. Master Ochi came over and asked, casually, "So, do we really let Gao Li join?" He didn't personally mind Gao Li's presence. Against the enemy they expected to face, one more or one fewer fighter made little difference. Geiwani fell silent, his expression complicated. After a few seconds he sighed. "Let us talk among ourselves first." "All right, but if you break the agreement later, don't blame us," Ochi warned. Geiwani's eyes widened as if offended. "Do I look like someone who'd do that?" He waved at Gao Li. "Boy, come here!" Gao Li pretended not to hear. Geiwani, gritting his teeth, called out, "Xiaojia, go fetch your little boyfriend. Here." Zatanna's face flamed. "Dad, he and I are just friends." All right, just call him over." When Gao Li finally stood before him, Geiwani hemmed and hawed, then coughed as if awkward. "Ahem, my old friends all agree that you were disrespectful to the great elders of the magic world, so they don't want you." Gao Li turned to the masters and shouted, "Mr. Geiwani says you guys." "Hey, wait!" Geiwani pulled him back. No, it's me who doesn't want you to join." "Why, personal grudge?" Gao Li asked. Geiwani was silent for a long moment, then admitted, "Not exactly a grudge, but personal feelings do play a part. I don't want Xiaojia involved. You're her friend. If you die, she'll blame me." Gao Li frowned. "Didn't Xiaojia tell you how strong I really am? You can't defeat me, and yet you would be willing to risk this? Why would I die from joining?" This time, Geiwani dropped his pride and spoke earnestly. "You are powerful. I'll admit that. It pains me to see the new generation push the old aside. If Xiaojia were entrusted to you, I'd feel safer. But, Dad, we're friends." Zatanna burst out, embarrassed and irritated. Don't talk like you're handing me over. If you think it's dangerous, then withdraw yourself and don't go deeper." Geiwani's face turned stern. "If we can't stop the evil witch group, even if I protect myself, I won't see tomorrow. Not just me. Everyone in the world will be gone. Gao Li may be strong, but compared to our true enemy, one strong person is a drop in the ocean. 100 of him wouldn't matter." "So your words contradict themselves," Gao Li said calmly. "If many of me are useless, why would one of you help? And if you won't withdraw because you want to maximize victory, but also don't want Xiaojia involved, why not listen to others?" He strode toward the distant group of magic masters. He realized nothing more would come from Geiwani. The old master wouldn't reveal the name of their real enemy. He had already said that merely speaking it might be sensed, so Geiwani was not going to help. "That's how it is," Geiwani snapped, flustered and angry, and he chased after Gao Li with Zatanna. "You probably don't feel as strongly as Mr. Zatara. Tell us who you're really fighting, as promised." Dr. Fate, Master Ochi, and Deadman Boston exchanged glances. Given the incredible display of power Gao Li had just shown, they eventually nodded. "All right," Dr. Fate said. "We need to stop an ancient group called the Evil Witch Group. They intend to perform a ritual to awaken their worshipped object, the ultimate darkness of the universe, the giant ferocious beast. It is said the giant ferocious beast. Kent, do not utter its name," a sudden voice warned. The helmet Dr. Fate wore glowed, and another deeper voice came from within it. The helmet came to life. "A mutation," someone exclaimed. Gao Li instinctively reached for his endless magic ring, almost ready to exorcise the spirit. "Wait," Master Ochi intervened. "This is Nabu, the god of order, the source of Dr. Fate's power." He didn't want Gao Li to impulsively offend Nabu. Nabu was a god of the order pantheon, a major deity, and no matter how strong Gao Li was as a magician, offending a true god would be disastrous. Kent added, "I'm the host. Nabu is the divine presence inside the helmet. When I channel the power of order, I become Dr. Fate." Oh, Gao Li thought, host and artifact. The helmet was a system augmenting Kent. But Nabu was more than Ochi described. He was the leader of true human archmages across history, a guardian of humanity. The Order Pantheon he founded consisted of ascended archmages turned into 8 divine artifacts forged from ninth metal. Nabu resided in the helmet as the God King. In short, Nabu was a sorcerer supreme level deity. For reasons unknown, Nabu's presence suddenly bristled with displeasure. The ring on Gao Li's hand made him uncomfortable. Kent, don't let irrelevant people join. Someone who gets conceited after learning a bit of magic will only mess things up, Nabu said. Gao Li raised an eyebrow. Why did this newly introduced god openly dislike him? The hostility was unexplained, and Gao Li would not tolerate it. If you're so confident you need no help, why didn't you even dare say the enemy's name earlier? Nabu did not take insults calmly. The helmet flew from Kent's head, releasing a crushing divine pressure that made the air leaden. Even the other masters felt their hair rise. Calm down, God Nabu. Gewani hurried between them. Dr. Fate and Master Ochi sweated. If Nabu struck, they could do nothing to protect Gao Li. Gao Li felt the pressure like a predator's presence, an absolute difference in level. Is this a true god? He thought. At that instant, a surge of endless magic from his ring spread through Gao Li. Nabu had once been a mortal mage who became a god. His divine power contained a strong magical component. The infinite nature of Gao Li's endless magic nullified that magical portion first, then began to unravel the divine order power like load-bearing beams being removed from a building. The oppressive aura collapsed, and relief flooded Gao Li's body. His back straightened, his pain vanished. Magic, he realized anew, was pervasive and mixed with other powers. Stay back, Nabu thundered. Angering a true god is punishable by death. Gewani, startled, stepped back. Despite his confidence, Gao Li reached out, pulling Gewani behind him. Am I wrong? According to the masters, the giant ferocious beast could destroy the universe. This isn't something to take lightly. Gao Li couldn't let this pass. The giant ferocious beast threatened everyone he cared about. He wouldn't tolerate it. Gewani stared in astonishment at Gao Li's composed face. Kent and Master Ochi were equally stunned. Even Moke and Boston, who had remained aloof, looked on. Gao Li had withstood the divine pressure far better than expected. Nabu himself, surprised, sniffed. You actually have some ability. But Nabu's surprise passed quickly to determination. I'm not joking. I came to find the ghost to ensure there are no errors. Under Nabu's divine influence, the ghost's will awakened within Alan. In a flash, Alan transformed into a shirtless, muscular man in a green cloak who looked down at everyone with arrogant certainty. The giant ferocious beast? He boomed. I already know about it. None of you need act. I alone can suppress it. Gao Li thought, good heavens, first a god, now this celebrity of hubris. Ghost, are you certain? Moke asked, frowning. Who do you think I am? The ghost snapped. I am the wrath of God. Before the Lord's wrath, there are no enemies. He ranked his power higher than Nabu's. To him, the assembled masters were beneath notice. Gao Li breathed slowly, controlling his temper. The ghost and Nabu treated him as insignificant, and he had no desire to curry favor with those who dismissed him. Gewani, relieved, said, Wise decision. You should take Xiao Jia and leave quickly. Gao Li shook his head, took Zatanna by the arm, and left. Outside the cabin, Zatanna kept glancing back, worried for her father. Gao Li noticed and tried to reassure her. Relax, they're confident. You're not even a magic master. Better to stay out of deep danger. Honestly, if the magic masters had gathered somewhere other than Gotham, he might not have come along with Zatanna at all. Even with Endless Mode as a backup, he wasn't recklessly arrogant. But learning about the giant ferocious beast, a rumored universe-ending being, forced him to pay attention. He couldn't ignore a threat that could end everything he cared about. So, are we just going to ignore it? Zatanna asked. Who said I'm ignoring it? Gao Li answered. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. I don't rely only on them. I prepare thoroughly. He produced several magic master rings from his pocket and cast quick spells. Garuda, appear. Unicorn, appear. Kraken, appear. 3 rings transformed into 3 small creatures, red, blue, and yellow, who took off, one into the sky, one burrowing into the ground, and one plunging into the sewer. 22. Section 22, Chapter 34, Finding Superman, the God Among Men, 2023-0820. What is this? Zatanna asked, peering at the tiny creatures in front of her. They're so cute. These are the familiars I summoned, Gowley explained. A Garuda, a unicorn, and a kraken. They'll help me search for the evil witch group, air, land, and sea coverage. If they could find and eliminate the evil witch group early, the giant ferocious beast crisis would naturally be much easier to handle. Zatanna understood immediately. Summoning familiars was standard procedure for magic masters. Are those three really enough? It still sounds like a lot of work. You're right. It'd be better to find the evil witch group as soon as possible. Gowley nodded and produced another ring. Copy, please. Under the circle's glow, a second Gowley appeared beside him and repeated the command. Copy, please. Copy, please. Copy, please. 2 became 4, 4 became 8, 8 became 16, until hundreds of Gowleys surrounded a bewildered Zatanna. She felt almost claustrophobic. Then the sea of Gowlis began to cast spells in unison, each summoning swarms of familiars that fanned out like locusts across the sky and water. This should be enough. Gowli dispelled the magic and condensed back into a single person. Zatanna blinked. Gowli, are you all right? Those clones hadn't been illusions. They were solid, each capable of casting spells. Thinking back, Gowli had essentially created thousands of temporary rings, summoned thousands of familiars, and poured magic into them, all in one go. The expenditure was staggering. What could be wrong with me? Gowli frowned, patting himself. Now that you mention it, I do feel a little tired. Zatanna was expressionless. He really lived up to his reputation as the second Lord of Magic. His output was impressive. What's your next move? Going back to Metropolis? No. Gowli shook his head. I'm heading to a small town in Kansas. Want to come? Zatanna blinked. You want to come with me? What for? Didn't I say? I like to prepare thoroughly and not put all my hope in one place. What I did just now was to neutralize the evil witch group as much as possible. I also need to prepare for the worst-case scenario if the giant ferocious beast is actually summoned. As he spoke, Gowli felt odd. His tone had slipped into a brooding, strategic cadence that sounded a little too much like Batman. Had he picked up the master's mannerisms? If the beast is as powerful as my father said, he continued, it might be beyond anything humans can handle. Only deities like Nabu or the Spectre could stand a chance. What else can we prepare? Then that's perfect, Gowli smiled slightly. I happen to know a god among men. When they arrived in Smallville, Zatanna couldn't help but be curious. You really expect to find a god in this little town? If such a being existed, wouldn't the magic masters have located him already? Gowli was uncertain. I didn't find him in Metropolis, so he might still be here, but I don't know how much he's grown. Though Gowli had a vague sense that Superman's magic resistance was low, Clark Kent was still one of the world's central figures, the sort of person who felt like a protagonist of fate. If the world faced annihilation, finding and recruiting the main character to help might matter. Besides, as a confirmed alien, Gowli was scientifically curious. Like boys and giant robots, scientists don't resist the chance to study extraterrestrials. They strolled into a tavern, the sort of mixed public house that usually yielded gossip. Gowli approached the bartender casually. Hi, do you know how to get to the Kent place? The Kents who run the farm? The bartender's eyes narrowed. Who are you? Rural places tended to be insular, and the newcomer's accents betrayed them. Zatanna rolled her eyes at Gowli. His blunt approach had been bound to set off alarms. She flashed a warm smile and stepped in. We're friends of the Kents. We wanted to visit, but we're new here and got a little lost. The bartender barked back. Why don't you just call them and have them pick you up? Zatanna's smile froze. Gowli's shoulders twitched. He almost laughed. Before she could think of a reply, Gowli produced a thick stack of $100 bills and held it out. Tell us, this money is yours. He wasn't lacking in subtlety. He was lacking patience. The bartender's eyes lit up. Experienced hands in small towns could spot a fake a mile away. This stack was real. The sight of money broke down his reserve. All right. Tell you what, I'll help. He leaned in and lowered his voice. There's been some strange rumors about their son. Oh, tell me more. Gowli offered another stack, and the bartender grinned like a man on a yacht. Not long ago, their school bus had an accident and went into the lake, the bartender said. Supposedly, the whole bus sank. Kids blacked out. Some thought they'd drowned. Zatanna frowned. That sounds like a miracle if everyone was okay. Why is it strange? The students on the bus said the bus actually went under, but somehow it was pushed back to shore. A few of them say they saw Clark Kent get out of the bus and swim around the back. Clark Kent, he's the Kent's boy, Zatanna said. Her eyes brightened at the confirmation. It was very likely he had pushed the bus ashore. Superman's superhuman strength fit the story. Anyway, Clark hasn't been to school since, the bartender continued. Some folks joke he might be some kind of water creature or something. It's weird. Gao Li had found his target. Chapter 35, FBI, Open the Door, 2023-08-20. On the way to the Kent farm, Zatanna and Gao Li argued over how best to approach the family. How are we going to contact them when we get there? Zatanna asked. Gao Li offered one idea after another, increasingly ridiculous. We could knock and shout, FBI, open up. What? That'll just create a misunderstanding. Then we say we're from community outreach. They'll know every community volunteer. Won't work. Okay, then we say we're delivering a package for Dongfeng Express, Zatanna sighed. Can you think of anything serious? What's not serious about pretending to deliver a package? Gao Li protested. Or do you have any hypnotism magic? I don't have any. If you could hypnotize them, we could just ask Clark to come out. Zatanna scowled. If you want to be a villain, go ahead. I have a moral line. I won't randomly hypnotize people. Gao Li rolled his eyes. He genuinely didn't have hypnotism rings, only a ring that would make the wearer fall asleep. As they approached the farm, they composed themselves and walked to the door. Hello, is anyone home? The door opened to reveal a middle-aged man with tired, red-rimmed eyes, Jonathan Kent. He barked, Who are you? What do you want? Gao Li tried the first pitch he'd thought of. We're interested in buying your farm. We'll pay handsomely. Not for sale. Goodbye. Jonathan started to shut the door. Quick as a flash, Gao Li wedged his foot in. Just kidding. Just kidding. Actually, we're friends of Clark Kent and wanted to invite him out. Is he home? Jonathan's face flared. Coming for Clark again? You vultures. Stop harassing us. Get out. He shoved Gao Li and slammed the door in their faces with a bang. Outside, the two exchanged glances. Zatanna shrugged. You looked more like a wealthy city type than a small-town resident. You were bound to be seen through. Gao Li scratched his head. They must have been hassled by reporters and others since Clark's story broke. That explains his reaction. They retreated a little way from the house to plan. Xiao Jia, I don't want to use any underhanded magic on ordinary people either, Gao Li said, but we have to find him. Let's think this through. If they were misunderstood, the consequences could be severe. Zatanna's face lit up. I have an idea. We won't use magic on the Kents. We'll use it on ourselves. We'll change our appearances and pretend to be the parents of a grateful student coming to thank them. They won't be so hostile to guests like that. Jonathan would hardly turn away a couple of thankful parents. Good plan, Gao Li said, warming to the idea. But let's tweak it. We'll be in our 70s or 80s. If he tries to push us, he won't dare use force. Better yet, Gao Li added with a mischievous glint, he pushes us, we fall down, and act hurt. He'll have to help us. He'll kneel, apologize, invite us in out of politeness. Let's fake a few bruises and some bone-breaking sounds for effect. Zatanna's conscience winced, but she had to admit the plan was effective. You're despicable, she complained, pinching her nose. But it might work. Gao Li produced 2 rings, the appearance change and outfit change rings used by magic masters. Lights flashed, and in moments they had aged into a fragile elderly couple, stooped and frail to the point of seeming easy to push over. Remember, Gao Li whispered, at the slightest touch we fall. Quick, precise, and convincing. Make some moans, maybe a fake cough. We need to sell it. Zatanna grimaced but nodded. They moved back to the front door and rapped 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. A voice from inside called, Who is it now? Section 23, Jonathan opened the door impatiently. When he saw the elderly couple on the porch, he quickly lowered his voice. Good afternoon. Can I help you? The older man's voice trembled. Good afternoon, Mr. Kent. I'm Bruce's grandfather. Bruce was on the school bus that day. He says Clark saved him. We came to thank him. Jonathan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. That must have been a hallucination from being underwater. Clark's just a kid. How could he have saved anyone? I'm sorry, but you should leave. It's all right, the old man pressed. We only want to meet the boy Clark in person. Bruce said Clark is very kind at school. You wouldn't refuse an old man that, would you? He was insistent, and the sight of his bony, frail hands made Jonathan relent. He let them in and led them into the entryway. Clark isn't home right now. Please, come back later. Zatanna gave a small practiced assist. Our legs are tired. May we rest a while? Jonathan sighed and took pity. All right, I'll make some tea. You can sit in the living room. They settled on the sofa while Jonathan moved to pour tea. Gowley leaned forward and whispered with a teasing smile, I didn't realize you were so capable. Zatanna flushed. What can I say? I still need to gather information. I know how to tell what matters. Martha Kent, looking exhausted, came downstairs to help her husband entertain the visitors. Soon the four of them were sitting with tea and snacks. At an opportune moment, the elderly man asked, Bruce told me Clark dropped out of school and that he hasn't been around the house. Did he go out somewhere? Martha shook her head. We don't know where he is. Lately. She stopped herself, fighting for composure. Her eyes were wet. Jonathan squeezed her hand to comfort her. Gowley, watching them, grew even more curious. Clearly the trouble wasn't only external. Could Clark himself be in some kind of trouble? After an hour of polite conversation, Gowley and Zatanna took their leave. They had stuck mostly to small talk, careful not to press the Kents too hard about Clark. Too much attention would only put the couple on guard. Still, Gowley had learned enough. Clark's personality had changed suddenly and badly. He had even injured Jonathan. He's not the Superman I know, Zatanna muttered. Is he just going through a rebellious phase? Gowley fell into thought. He couldn't explain to Zatanna the special significance of Superman. She wouldn't understand the concept of a child of fortune. He could only shrug. Let's find him first. Zatanna spread her hands. You're paying, so it's up to you. What's the plan? Gowley considered the Kent's clues. If Clark's life is mostly between home and school, his social circle is at school. He might confide in friends. If he has a secret place he goes when he's upset, he'd be more likely to tell his friends than his parents. Let's go to Smallville High. They hurried toward Clark's school. Before they reached the gate, they heard chaos. Thick black smoke rose in the distance, and crowds of students were running out in panic. What's going on? Zatanna cried. Is there been a shooting? Gowley rolled his eyes at her American assumption. Zatanna, you're not from America. Why are you thinking like that? Zatanna blinked. Who said I'm not from the U.S.? My father's Italian, but I was born in San Francisco. They quickened their pace and slipped into the campus. A fierce fire had broken out. The alarm blared and smoke poured into the sky. Zatanna looked to Gowley. Shouldn't we put it out? Gowley shook his head. Not yet. The energy signature of these flames is abnormal. It doesn't look like a natural fire. If we interfere recklessly, it could alert the enemy. He spread his magic instead, skimming the fire to see how its energies reacted. Use your spells to rescue and clean up, but cast them away from the source. We'll go see quietly. Zatanna stared. You can sense that? You're a sorcerer. How can you sense non-magical energy? I sense how my magic is affected by other energies, Gowley explained. It's indirect, but it tells me whether the fire is natural or something else. Impressed, Zatanna gathered a large reserve of power and whispered an incantation. Her spell ran across the campus, confirming what Gowley had sensed. The students and staff had largely evacuated. Everyone's out, she said. Almost the whole school got out. All right, then, Gowley said, closing his eyes to map the place. He ran to where the magical disturbance was most intense, Zatanna close behind. They hadn't gone far before a violent confrontation came into view. Two figures faced each other, one surrounded by roaring flames, the other holding a car with one hand. Let's watch, Gowley said. They hid around a corner. The man holding the car flung it. The other created a massive fireball in midair to intercept it. Gas ignited instantly. The car exploded in a huge blast. The one who lifted a car must be Clark Kent, Gowley murmured. But who's he fighting? Before his debut as Superman, he looked like a small-town kid. Does he really fight this kind of foe? They watched as the fire controller condensed a roaring fire dragon and sent it at Clark. Clark didn't dodge. He charged straight at it. With a single explosive force, the dragon was obliterated, and the impact sent the fire controller sprawling. Look at him, Coach Oakes. Where's that superior attitude you showed me before? Why aren't you so arrogant now? Clark laughed, taunting the disheveled teacher. Clark's mouth ran on and on. In his heightened state, his eyes had turned red and glowed. With the burning backdrop, he looked less like a teenager and more like a demon king. Gao Li and Zatanna were stunned. Gao Li, are you sure finding him was a good idea? Zatanna whispered. He doesn't look like someone who will protect the world, Gao Li replied. He looks like someone who wants to rule it. Gao Li considered the possibility that this was not the Clark he knew at all. Maybe I'm in a parallel world where Superman turns villain, he thought. The idea unsettled him. Oaks, the teacher, finally pushed back. He hadn't expected Clark to be so dangerous. Last week, he'd beaten Clark badly. Back then, unknown to him, there had been kryptonite dust at the scene, which had weakened Clark and left him helpless. Now Clark's anger surged. You beat me because I wouldn't play football, Clark shouted. You leaked exam questions so kids could cheat. You almost killed the principal, Oaks sneered. So it was you who saved the principal from the burning car. I was wondering how he escaped. Clark roared, furious. I don't want to talk. I will judge you and execute you myself. He produced red beams from his eyes and detonated a giant fireball midair. The blast sent Oaks flying. He spat blood on the ground and struggled to stand. Clark's voice turned cold. This is the end for you. Go to hell. Gao Li could not let it happen. Clark had once saved the principal. He still had the capacity for good, and killing would cross a line. If Clark began deciding who lived or died, it would open a dangerous path. Gao Li stepped from hiding. Clark turned with contempt. So the little rat comes out, he sneered. My supervision and super hearing picked you up from the start. Gao Li gave the boy a single measured reply. I don't have much to say. Oaks is a scumbag, but that doesn't mean you should stain your hands with blood. Opportunity, Oaks cried. Seeing Gao Li's intervention as a chance to escape, he conjured a torrent of flames and hurled them at Gao Li, letting fireballs engulf him. Then he bolted, laughing. Do you like saving people? Go save him! Oaks planned to use Clark's sense of justice as a distraction, then run. Clark watched with cold, detached interest. He didn't rush after Oaks. He intended to toy with the man until he despaired, then catch him with his speed. Gao Li had no intention of letting someone burn. Gao Li! Zatanna shouted, dashing forward to quench the flames with reverse magic. But the fires behaved oddly. They contracted, gathering toward a single point. A familiar chant rose from them, an incantation of flame. The burning tongues pulled into a crimson magic circle that snapped into being beneath Gao Li, enveloping him completely. You're 2,000 years too early to hurt me with fire, Gao Li said with a cold laugh. Of course he had been ready. He had already accumulated counter magic in his body. Oh, what's this? Even Clark looked surprised. He hadn't expected Gao Li to be completely fine and to conjure a magic circle like a real spellcaster. Most of the enemies Clark had faced before were powered-up locals whose abilities sprang from kryptonite scattered around town. He'd never seen anything as flashy as a magic circle. This is magic. Haven't you seen it before? Gao Li put a finger to his lips. Keep it secret from your classmates, Clark blinked. He was used to being cocky. The expression on his face turned from smug to baffled for a few seconds before he schooled it into a sarcastic smile. You wouldn't let me kill that scumbag earlier, and then you got ambushed by the one you protected. How do you feel now? Heh heh. Gao Li flicked the wizard sword gun into his hand with a backhand and fired 4 shots in quick succession, puncturing Oaks's limbs. Oaks collapsed, howling in pain. Gao Li blew on the non-existent smoke from the barrel. Clearly, he's taken a death wish. Clark was silent. He'd meant to mock Gao Li's hypocrisy. He enjoyed seeing self-righteous types squirm, but he hadn't expected Gao Li to open fire so decisively, without hesitation. This guy was ruthless too. After suppressing his surprise, Clark sniffed and said, After all that, you still showed mercy? You didn't actually kill him. Clark had used his X-ray vision. Oaks was screaming and badly hurt, but not fatally. He'd be bedridden for years, his athleticism permanently damaged, but he would survive. Gao Li chuckled and replied coolly, There was no need. For truly monstrous criminals, Gao Li would kill when necessary, but right now his priority was to stop Clark from crossing that line. Huh, Clark started. This man's life has already been branded with fear by me. Even if he uses his power again, he'll be crippled by a psychological shadow. Gowley's voice was soft but cold enough to chill to the bone. Whether he's in prison or eventually released, every time he sees those scars that won't fade until he dies, every time he feels his strength diminished after healing, those things will remind him. They'll ring an alarm in his soul and make him remember there was a man unafraid of his fire and how powerless he felt before that man. Even Clark, someone who prided himself on fearlessness, felt a momentary shiver. Then a subtle thought crept in. Gowley sounded a lot like Batman. That method of inflicting lasting fear without killing was exactly Batman's way of keeping Gotham in check while respecting a no-kill rule. Ordinary criminals, terrified of the legend, wouldn't reoffend, otherwise nightly patrols would be pointless. Clark's silence turned to anger. I thought you were playing Saint, but you're not even pretending anymore. You're just trash to be wiped out. After a pause, he glared at Gowley. Why do you have such a huge problem with me? Gowley frowned. Can't we talk? I wasn't at the Kent farm this afternoon, but my super hearing and vision picked up your sneaking around my house loud and clear. Clark sneered, his eyes flashing red. I didn't want to bother with you little guys. I was only going to teach you a lesson when I had time. But you walked straight into my trap. It seems negotiations are over. Gowley took out the endless wizard ring. Then I'll have to deal with you first. Clark wasn't scared. The magic looked impressive, but he'd fought too many strange, powerful beings to be intimidated. His high school was full of hidden talents. Kids with electricity, heat absorbers, monstrous strength, invisibility, mutated bee swarms. He'd beaten them all. None had matched his power. He dismissed Gowley with contempt. He freeze? Zatanna, who had been standing by, acted decisively. Clark's magical resistance was poor. She struck him with a spell that encased him in a giant block of ice the size of a rockery. Let's restrain him first, and then we... Gowley's face changed, and he dashed forward. Careful, this won't hold him. The ice exploded. A scorching beam lanced toward Zatanna. Thanks to Gowley's warning, she already cast a short defensive spell. Protect! Bang! Clark's heat vision smashed into Zatanna's shield and shattered it in less than half a second, sending her flying and slamming her head against the ground. She bled where her skull struck. Gowley's sprinting spell, however, had completed. Connect and Amplify took hold. His hand stretched through space and caught Zatanna in midair. So strong, she gasped, wiping blood from her eyes. Facing Clark in real combat, she finally understood how terrifying his steel body was. Offense, defense, and speed all fused into one. Her freeze had little effect. The chill was trivial to him, and ice blocks the size of rockeries were like paper. Heat vision outran any spell and rivaled top-tier offensive magic. For the first time in a fight, Zatanna felt she could have been killed. Clark climbed out of the ice shards, sneering. So weak and you still provoke me? You're begging for death. Gowley knelt beside Zatanna and gently wiped the blood from her head, then turned to Clark with a hard look. Clark Kent. Clark cocked his head as if listening. Begging for mercy, I like that. Entertain me. Maybe I'll be merciful and spare you. Gowley spoke slowly, each word measured. Do you bleed? What? He was stunned long enough for Gowley to slot the endless wizard ring into the wizard driver. Unlimitedness, please. A dazzling pillar of light shot up into the sky like a diamond. A giant magic circle appeared, its sacred incantations filling the air. Gold, wood, water, fire, earth, all-encompassing Yinglong. Clark bristled, then composed himself. No matter the power he'd faced before, he'd always relied on his steel body to smash through. He fired another heat vision, but halfway there, a diamond-scaled Yinglong flashed out and blocked it. The beam couldn't even scratch a single scale. What? Clark finally blurted, incredulous. Even a mythic beast? Who is this guy? What shocked Clark wasn't just the size of the Yinglong, more like a legendary dragon materializing out of an epic, but that his heat vision hadn't even dented a single scale. It was the first time anyone had resisted his heat vision without taking damage. Damn it, if rays won't work, I'll take him down with speed and strength. Clark ground his teeth. The Yinglong circled and merged into Gowley's body. Gowley transformed into Kamen Rider wizard, endless style. Clark lunged recklessly and threw a fist the size of a sandbag, the air whistling around it. Bang! Clark realized, with a hollow sound that Gao Li had raised a hand and caught the punch. His feet dug furrows in the ground from the kinetic force, and he'd been pushed back several meters, but he hadn't been knocked away. Impossible. Clark blinked in disbelief. Gao Li wasn't immune to physical force, but Endless Style's defenses were already remarkable. The magic crystals across its body had a hardness 10 times that of diamonds. Defend, please. Gao Li blocked the first punch with his right hand and used his left to cast a defensive spell. Clark recovered and threw another punch instantly, pushing farther back, his strength clearly still superior. Bang! The collision thundered, even pushing surrounding air aside. Gao Li took the blow again, but this time the defensive magic held him like an iron stake. He didn't budge an inch. Clark's pupils contracted. His proud super strength couldn't hurt this opponent. His heat vision hadn't worked, and now super strength was ineffective. Those two attacks had been the foundation of his fighting style, and both had just failed. Confidence drained away. The unsteady will of a teenager quivered. You bully the weak with your strength. Gao Li said quietly, stepping forward, radiating pressure. Today, here, I'll make you feel what it's like to be weak. Under the shock, Clark instinctively stepped back. He hated himself for it and lashed out again, circling Gao Li at blinding speed, looking for a weakness. I'm faster than him, he thought. If I land 1,000 punches in an instant, I'll break through. Gao Li remained calm. He put the endless wizard ring back on the driver. Unlimitedness. Unlike Endless Style, Gao Li's deeper cultivation let him cast a spell that warped the flow of time without summoning the Hui Huang sword axe. Suddenly, his figure became a streak of extreme light, and he closed the distance to Clark. In fact, against Clark, who still hadn't mastered full flight, Gao Li's speed now surpassed his. What? Clark's face went white. Not only were heat vision and super strength useless, but now even his last lifeline, speed, was at a disadvantage. What? Clark was so startled and panicked that Gao Li's punch caught him off guard and sent him flying. Only after he hit the ground did he seem to collect himself, forcing a smile and trying to steady his confidence. Heh! Ha ha! I really scared myself. Isn't his strength weaker than mine? Turns out he's just tougher than I thought. You just exposed yourself. You said you'd let me know what it feels like to be weak, yet you can't do it at all. Is that so? Gao Li pointed at him from a distance. Then next, you better grit your teeth and actually feel that powerlessness. What else are you going to do? Clark frowned. Then Gao Li asked suddenly, Aren't you curious about your origins? Clark froze. He knew the Kents weren't his biological parents, and he'd always been puzzled about where he came from. Could this man possibly know? How? Of course. Clark couldn't help but think. Gao Li chuckled and started activating the 10-meter dash, chanting in the precise format required to trigger the skill. He called out, Clark Kent! Why are your parents ordinary humans, yet you have a body of steel? Why do you go completely weak and paralyzed when you touch green stones? Why do all your abilities strengthen as you age? Clark snorted. Was Gao Li trying to distract him with those questions? Too obvious. Even if he was curious, he wouldn't let Gao Li get the upper hand. Clark stamped his foot and charged, but in the next instant he realized his super speed was gone, turned into a maddeningly slow, snail's pace crawl. What did you do? Clark bumped into the ground again and again, moving by centimeters like a crawling turtle. This was worse than having his power suppressed. It was an experience he'd never had. There's only one answer. Gao Li, while limiting Clark's speed, slipped rings onto his fingers and activated 5 major spells in sequence. Giant, please. Speed, please. Gravity, please. Thunder, please. Connect, please. All 5 chants burst out at once. A connection magic circle materialized above Clark's head. Speed magic accelerated Gao Li's impending strikes. Gravity magic increased the downward force of the blows. Lightning enchanted the attacks to exploit Clark's poor magic resistance. And the most terrifying of them all, the giant spell, enlarged anything that passed through the magic circle, proportionally increasing size, mass, and strength. Clark's eyes lit up. He tried to use heat vision to break free, but it was too late. A gigantic fist, like a small mountain, dropped from the sky with the force of a landslide and smashed into him. Boom! An unprecedented pressure and crushing pain drove Clark into the earth. He couldn't resist. The force was nothing like before. Gao Li, who had seemed weaker moments ago, had somehow become far stronger. The added kinetic energy from the speed and gravity spells made Clark's head ring. The lightning left him paralyzed and unable to dodge. Why is lightning affecting me so much? He thought. He'd been hit by lightning before. It had knocked him back, but it had never neutralized him like this. Before he could puzzle it out, Gowley's second blow came. A massive boot stomped down on his face. Clark cried out in agony as warm liquid streamed from his mouth and nose. He stared in shock. Blood. He had only ever seen blood on others. He had never bled himself. I'm bleeding. Chaos filled his mind. New searing pain from his broken nose drove a spike of fear and then burning anger. Bastard! How dare you! As Clark ground out the words and tried to rise, Gowley kicked him back into the ground. Boom! The rumble went through the earth. Gowley's cold voice floated down from above. Did I let you get up? Ah! It hurts! It hurts! Clark curled around his abdomen, face twisted with panic and hatred. Pain tolerance can be trained, but Clark had lived almost pain-free, except for last week's beating, so sudden intense pain hit him harder than most. Gowley leaned in close, voice soft. Feel it, learn it, fix it in your memory. This is what fear tastes like. Then he punched down again, and Clark's wails filled the air. Stop, please stop, he moaned. No, Clark Kent, I want you to remember this day deeply. Gowley spoke calmly as he delivered another brutal kick. Clark's mouth and nose streamed blood. His vision fuzzed, and Gowley's voice swelled in his ears. In the years to come, in your most private moments when you're arrogant because of your strength, I want you to remember the one who beat you. Even though Clark was black and blue, Gowley didn't let up. He roared like a berserker and smashed forward, fists flying in a ruthless barrage. Aura! 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 A rain of punches, each amplified by different magics, battered Clark. The onslaught was a tsunami of pain. He fainted before he could even cry out. The series of blows landed like meteorites, shaking the unburnt school buildings around them. Zatanna, watching from a distance, gaped. Clark, the invincible figure she'd believed in, was being shredded by Gowley. Rays can be blocked, speed can be surpassed, strength suppressed. My God, so that's what he meant when he said that day, she whispered, recalling Gowley's arrogant declaration the day he became Lord of Magic. This endless style really was that strong. And that weird speed-limiting magic, spatial? I can't sense any trace of its power. The mystery around Gowley deepened. Soon, Gowley cast binding magic and summoned chains, dragging the unconscious Clark over. He also muttered a spell to put out the school fire. All right, done. Xiao Jia, want to stomp on him a few times to vent? Zatanna hesitated. Thanks, but I don't think that's necessary. She remembered the gentleness Gowley had shown when he wiped her injuries earlier and couldn't help blushing. Besides, you beating him up for me counts as revenge already. Thank you, Gowley. Gowley shrugged. No problem. To be honest, I wanted to hit him too. I didn't deserve all the insults. Zatanna laughed. Then if you can beat him so easily, why are we still looking for this human god? Isn't he far weaker than you? To be honest, I'm not sure anymore, Gowley said, frowning. His magic resistance is far too bad, and the magic world is in a big crisis. Maybe he really can't do anything. Gowley tossed Clark aside and considered how to deal with the young Superman. Killing him or letting him go both seemed unwise. Perhaps first he should figure out why Clark's personality had changed so drastically. Then Zatanna suddenly gasped and pointed at Clark's hand. Gowley, look, he's wearing a ring like yours. Do middle schoolers wear rings now? Very few boys that age wore rings, and the sight caught Gowley's attention. A red gemstone ring? Let me see. He took the ruby ring from Clark's finger and closed his eyes, concentrating. When his own magic brushed against the stone, he felt a faint energy fluctuation interfering with him. Ordinary gems wouldn't do that. This ring wasn't normal. This ring seems to be emitting something like radiation, but very faint, practically no effect on a human body. Gowley turned the ring over in his hand for a moment, then slipped it into his pocket. He planned to take it back to the Fadian group for analysis. Clark, lying on the ground, groaned and slowly came around. As he woke, a flood of memories crashed over him, and he wore a mask of pain and shame. Oh no! My God! How could this happen? What irreversible mistakes have I made? Bound by chains, Clark twisted and writhed as the memories hit him. Gao Li could hardly help a wry thought. The expression reminded him of an adult finding old embarrassing photos from their Chunibu phase. Sudden regret and self-reproach, head-banging and shouting. Forget it, forget it. In short, Clark showed no trace of his previous arrogance. His face was a riot of regret, discomfort, remorse, and self-blame. Why did he change so suddenly? Zatanna whispered to Gao Li. He's completely different. If he's faking it, he deserves an Oscar for Best Actor. Gao Li considered this and said, "It's probably related to that ring I just took off. I can't think of any other reason." A little while later, Clark had emptied out the worst of his painful memories and noticed Gao Li. Even though his personality had shifted, he was still Clark Kent, and the beating he'd just taken was fresh in his mind. Seeing Gao Li made his whole body tense. He trembled like a man with PTSD. "Ah, what are you looking at?" Gao Li noticed Clark staring and asked a simple rhetorical question. The young Superman flinched. "Ah, no. I'm so sorry about earlier. I'm truly sorry. It's all my fault. It was probably for the best. Clark hadn't been exposed to much Japanese culture, otherwise he'd have performed a dojiza on the spot. Section 26. It's all right. I accept your apology. Now tell me, Clark, what exactly happened earlier?" Seeing Clark return to his usual good-natured self, Gao Li's tone softened. "We visited the Kent farm. Your parents said you used to be well-behaved. You wouldn't have acted like that." Clark's face clouded with memory. He sighed. "It was the school ring. The moment I put it on, I felt different. All my moral restraint vanished. I just wanted to give in to whatever I felt." As Clark explained, the story came together. The ring was their middle school class ring. The ruby insert should have been plastic, but someone at the school had cut corners and used a local red stone instead. Those red stones, like the green ones that once made Clark weak all over, had come from the meteor shower that fell on Smallville. On ordinary people, they did almost nothing, but around him they reacted violently. "So that's it." Gao Li's expression changed. The red stone looked like a form of kryptonite, red kryptonite, not green. When Gao Li had pressed the ring to Clark's skin earlier and seen his blue veins flare, the clue fit. Clark, in his account, had been a recklessly belligerent teenager under the ring's influence. The red kryptonite amplified and released the desires inside a Kryptonian, tearing down moral barriers. That explained why Clark had stolen Jonathan's credit card and gone out to party, why he had shoved his adoptive father when Jonathan tried to stop him, why he'd later sought revenge at school after being disciplined by a coach. It also explained the brutal punch Gao Li had landed when Clark charged in. Clark sounded ashamed as he finished. "Can you untie me? I want to go home and apologize to my parents right away." With his strength, Clark could have snapped the chains in an instant, but he didn't have the courage to do it while Gao Li watched. Gao Li glanced at him, as if coming out of a reverie, and awkwardly helped him free his wrists. "Thanks," Clark said quietly. "By the way, I still don't know your name, and why did you come looking for me?" He had remembered Gao Li's furtive visit to the Kent house, and for the sake of his adoptive parents, had finally mustered the nerve to ask. Even after everything, Clark remained convinced Gao Li and Zatanna meant no harm. Despite his power, Gao Li had shown no inclination to hurt ordinary people. "My name is Gao Li Wayne, and this is my friend Zatanna Zatara. We actually came hoping you could help us with a powerful enemy," Gao Li said plainly. Clark winced. "Mr. Wayne, you overestimate me. I couldn't beat you. How could I help you fight an enemy?" Gao Li laughed and patted Clark on the shoulder, leaving him more puzzled. "You're still in your growth phase. Think of yourself like a mature Digimon. You'll be extremely powerful when you evolve into your ultimate and mega forms." Clark blinked at the odd analogy, but then perked up when Gao Li added, "But to be honest, your steel body is focused on raw physical defense. It's not very good against magic. Maybe you really can't help us this time." "Magic?" Clark, still a teenager at heart, lit up. "Magic is real? Can I learn it?" Gao Li paused. The idea of Superman learning magic was strange. He considered it, then shook his head. "No, it's not really possible." Clark's face fell. "Because I don't have the aptitude." "That's part of it," Gao Li said. "You don't carry magic in your body naturally. I could find ways around that, but there are other problems. Even if you became a magician, you still wouldn't be as effective in combat as you are now. It would be like putting a limiter on you, and becoming a magician carries great risk. If you fail, you could become something like a phantom demon. With what you'll achieve in the future, there's no reason to take such risks. He went on to explain that certain protections against magic were tied to his own unique state, endless style having received feedback from a divine status, and were privileges of Gao Li himself, the Lord of Magic. In short, magic might sound cool, but it would not solve Clark's vulnerability to magical attacks. Clark didn't stay down long. "Mr. Wayne, you keep talking about my future. Can you see the future?" Gao Li smiled. "Not exactly. I just know you very well. I know what level you'll reach." "Know me very well?" Clark's mind raced back to the time Gao Li had limited his speed. Could Gao Li know his true origin? "Mr. Wayne, do you know where I'm from? Please tell me." That question, "Who am I? Where do I come from?" had gnawed at Clark his whole life. Gao Li hesitated a moment, then nodded. "I can tell you. Consider it an early reward." "Listen carefully, Clark. Your real name is Kal-El. You're not human. You're Kryptonian." The name landed with a strange weight. Clark touched his cheek without realizing it. "Kal-El? Kryptonian? Then why did I end up on Earth?" "Because Krypton exploded," Gao Li said, recalling the story he'd learned. "Before the planet went, your parents put you in an escape pod and sent you to Earth. The meteor shower people talked about was your pod and the debris, those red and green stones, the kryptonite. If they'd come from his homeworld, it made sense they affected him so strongly. Answers clicked into place in Clark's head. He had one last question. "How do you know so much about this?" Gao Li's eyes took on a distant look. "I once saw a Saiyan from planet Vegeta who also came to Earth. Then his planet exploded too. That's from another world, though. I don't know all the details. You should ask your father, your biological father." Clark's face brightened. "Is he still alive? Where is he? Tell me." "He's not alive, but he did create an artificial intelligence modeled on himself," Gao Li said. "That's your second reward. There's a place called the Fortress of Solitude in the North Pole. You'll find answers there." In many universes, the Fortress of Solitude was Superman's sanctuary. In Gao Li's mental library, it was an exploration ship left by Kryptonians, what Superman later named the Fortress. Gao Li figured Clark would eventually discover it, so telling him now was giving him a head start. North Pole, Fortress of Solitude? Clark's eyes widened. For a kid who'd never left Smallville, the North Pole seemed impossibly far. He couldn't fly yet and had no money. How would he get there? Gao Li's face fell briefly, then he brightened. "I almost forgot. You can't fly yet. Third reward. I'll take you there." "Heh. Honestly, I'm curious about alien technology myself. It'll be a good chance to study it," Gao Li added with a grin. Clark was embarrassed. "Isn't that too much? You've given me so much already, and I can't repay you." "It's nothing," Gao Li waved it off. "This is small change." Gao Li praised him silently for being a decent kid, then sent a message to Harley, asking her to find the fastest way to the North Pole. In Metropolis, Harley, who had been about to go to bed, saw the boss's phone light up and begrudgingly climbed out of bed. Since becoming Gao Li's secretary, her routine had gone out the window. The doctor had said she was perfectly normal until she started working for Gao Li. Harley set to work. Soon she had a list of options and sent it back. Zatanna and Clark crowded around to read. The first option is our private jet. It's fastest, but not equipped for extreme polar conditions, so it carries some risk. Second, fly via a professional outfit like Borneo Ice Camp. It takes about 3 days and is reasonably priced. If you want a unique experience, there's the nuclear icebreaker 50 Years of Victory, operated by Poseidon Company. There's also the Chagall Cruise icebreaker, but that's 15 days, rather long. Or you could fly by airship with Ocean Sky, very expensive. So Clark, which do you want? Clark stared at the figures Harley had listed and felt faint. Even the modest plane option listed by Gao Li was over €20,000 per ticket. The airship was over $200,000 per person. This was a world of the wealthy. After the memory of maxing out Jonathan's card, Clark felt humbled. They're all too expensive. I can't afford any of them. Gao Li looked surprised. I said I'd take you. Of course I'll pay. It's nothing. Clark's admiration for Gao Li skyrocketed. That night, Gao Li and Zatanna brought the bruised, swollen Clark back to the Kent home. Clark wanted to apologize to his adoptive parents, ask them how they'd found him all those years ago, and tell them he was going to the North Pole with Gowley the next day. When Martha opened the door, she covered her mouth at the sight of him. "Oh my goodness, Clark, what happened to you?" "Don't worry, a little sun tomorrow will help him recover," Gowley said. Jonathan's brow furrowed when he saw the two companions behind Clark. You were the people who came looking for Clark earlier today, weren't you?" "That's right," Gowley shrugged. "I told you we were Clark's friends, but you didn't believe me." Jonathan's face softened. "I apologize for my attitude earlier. It's just that I've met most of Clark's friends, but I didn't recognize your faces." "Clark, you haven't introduced your new friends to us yet," Martha said kindly. "This is Mr. Wayne, and this is Miss Zatara," Clark said. Then, hanging his head, he added, "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry I hurt you." The Kents stared, stunned, then rushed to him. "Clark, you're back to normal?" Jonathan whispered. Clark nodded. The family hugged in silence, relief washing over them. They invited Gowley and Zatanna inside, and before questions could start, set out tea and snacks and welcomed them warmly. 27. Section 27. "Clark, who beat you up like this?" Jonathan demanded. Clark stammered. "It was Mr. Wayne, but he did it to help me recover." The Kents hesitated. They were grateful to Gowley for bringing Clark back to them, but unsettled by how roughly he'd been handled. It felt wrong that Clark, invulnerable and immensely strong, had been beaten to the point of barely recognizing his own mother, while Gowley showed no signs of injury. The image sat uneasily with them. "Could he be an alien too?" Jonathan murmured. Clark heard and looked at his father. "Dad, you really knew I was an alien, didn't you? How did you find me back then?" Faced with Clark's steady questioning, the Kents told him what had happened years ago. "The small ship that brought you, I've kept it hidden in the underground room of the barn. After our guest leaves, I can show it to you." "That won't do," Gowley said, popping his head back into the doorway. "To find the Fortress of Solitude in the vast north, you need the key from the ship." The Kents looked at Clark in surprise. "Clark, Mr. Wayne knows about your origins? And the North Pole?" Clark scratched his head, a little embarrassed. "I haven't told them yet. Tomorrow I'm going to the North Pole with Mr. Wayne. He said I can find answers about where I came from there." Jonathan's expression hardened. A stranger had suddenly appeared and now wanted to take his son to the North Pole. It sounded too much like abduction. Gowley seemed to read their concern and shook his head. "Relax. If I could lay you guys out like that, you have nothing to fear if I wanted to harm him. I brought him back to prove I don't mean him harm." Jonathan cleared his throat. "That may be, but we can't afford a trip to the North Pole." Gowley waved it off. "Don't worry, I'll cover the expenses. Consider it payment for all the people he's saved." Jonathan frowned. "I've always taught Clark that saving people should be done without expecting anything in return." "Why can't saving people expect a return?" Gowley interrupted. "You demand your son be a saint, but have you thought about how that affects others?" Jonathan bristled. "How could that be negative? It's a righteous principle," Gowley explained calmly. "Think about it. If someone saves another and refuses any compensation, they gain a sterling reputation. After that, what do others do when they can help? If someone else saves another person and accepts a reward, people will compare them unfavorably to the first savior, thinking they're morally inferior. Over time, helping others becomes thankless. Except for true saints, most people will stop taking the risk of helping because of the social consequences. That means many more people who could be saved won't be." The Kents and Clark fell silent. None of them had looked at it that way. After thinking it over, they had to admit Gowley's point made sense. They spent the rest of the night thinking in their separate rooms. Gowley didn't stick around to lecture them further. After finishing tea and snacks, he and Zatanna said their goodbyes. Back at his hotel, Gowley opened the system interface that had just popped up a new notification. "It seems running the company for 6 months paid off, an S-rank lottery draw." He smiled, then decided the S-rank prize probably reflected not just his business successes, but the impact he'd made at Magic Masters and tonight's encounter with Superman. He rubbed his hands together, performed a quick ceremonial hand-washing, muttered a string of ironically reverent prayers to the three pure ones, Buddha, God, and himself, then initiated the draw. When the machine stopped, the prize dispersed into a scatter of lights that condensed into a silver card. Gowley turned it over and saw a blue Kamen Rider illustrated on it, familiar but foreign. Kamen Rider Aqua, he murmured. Kamen Rider Aqua was a future rider from 2051 who drew power from water. Because he used future tech, his abilities were exceptional. Heightened senses that could detect distortions in space-time, excellent stats across the board, and the defining trait that when he entered a body of water, all his powers multiplied. Gowley smiled at the card. It would be perfect against ocean-based threats, but not immediately useful. He tucked the card away. He then played with the red kryptonite ring. He'd once thought kryptonite only weakened Superman. Now he saw it could awaken powers in ordinary people. When he asked Clark about previous metahumans affected by kryptonite, the answers worried him. Most who gained abilities suffered severe side effects or even fatal flaws. One who absorbed heat had to continuously intake heat or freeze. The coach they had subdued in town had volatile internal temperatures. Clark told the police to handle him with care lest he spontaneously combust. Gowley guessed that the radiation-altering genes at that level would also be highly carcinogenic. Tomorrow I'll have the company recover more kryptonite, he decided, then put on the sleep ring from Magic Masters and fell into a deep sleep. Early the next morning, without waking Zatanna, Gowley went ahead to the Kent farm to examine Clark's escape pod. He knew something about alien tech. The astronomical switch was alien, and he wanted to study the pod. He poked at the hull, ran his hands over strange alloys and complex geometric engravings, muttering aloud. Is this script, a circuit, an aesthetic choice? He wondered. The Kents and Clark watched him do a meticulous circuit around the pod all morning until Zatanna arrived from the hotel and called him back to himself. I can't deduce much without proper instruments, Gowley said finally. May I buy it? The Kents shook their heads immediately. No, Jonathan said reflexively. This is our most precious memory of bringing Clark home. Gowley smiled and held up a finger. Name your price. No, $100,000. No, $1 million. We won't sell it, Jonathan blurted, then clutched his chest. The thought of selling their son's ship was unbearable. Clark, a teenager, felt tempted. Dad, Mom, sell it. $10 million would set us for life. Martha stood firm. We will never profit from our son's past. Gowley raised the stakes casually. $100 million, and I can pay more. They all gasped, especially Clark, whose face flushed at the sum. But the Kents' resolve was unshakable. They refused, not only out of principle, but because they distrusted the complications a wealthy financier like Gowley might bring into their quiet lives. All right, Gowley sighed. I won't force it. There are other things I need to study anyway, like the Fortress of Solitude. After Clark packed his bag, Gowley and Zatanna took him to the airport. Zatanna wasn't yet advanced enough in Magic Masters to cast spatial anti-magic, so they traveled conventionally, private car to the business private terminal, straight through VIP security, into the first-class lounge, and shipped directly to the plane via electric cart. It was an incredible experience for a boy who'd never even flown commercially. Clark gaped at it all and worried aloud about whether he had to pay for food in the lounge. Just as they were about to board, a small, fiery red bird swooped in, one of Gowley's familiars, Garuda. Gowley checked the message and his expression shifted. What is it? Zatanna guessed. Did you find the evil witch group? Gowley nodded. I can't go to the Fortress of Solitude right now. The evil witch group has to be dealt with immediately. If they're left unchecked, they could trigger a world-ending crisis. He turned to Zatanna. Xiao Jia, we'll split up. I'll go after the evil witch group. You take the fastest plane back to Gotham and stay with your father. Keep in touch with me telepathically on the way. Clark looked stunned and uneasy. Mr. Wayne, what about me? What should I do? You go to the North Pole as planned, Gowley replied. With the key from your escape pod, you should be able to find the Fortress of Solitude I mentioned. It's basically a large spaceship. Clark's voice wavered. But I've never been to the North Pole. Calm down. Gowley patted his shoulder. You're stronger and healthier than ordinary people. You won't be abducted. Your safety is fine. Everything depends on you. I believe in you. Don't you want to learn magic? Believe. That's the start of it. Okay, I understand, Mr. Wayne. Clark said, a little dazed by the pep talk. Zatanna asked, puzzled, "Why send me back to Gotham? Wouldn't it be safer for you to have me by your side against ancient witches?" Gowley explained, "Dr. Fate said the evil witch group is a cabal of ancient witches. If they're witches, they aren't my match. Your father can cast spatial movement magic, so whatever we need, we can call him through you and teleport all the magic masters in an instant. That's safer." Understanding, Zatanna hurried onto her flight to Gotham. Gao Li boarded a different plane bound for the southern United States, where the evil witch group was hiding. Clark stood on the tarmac, scratching his head and wondering, what did he mean? A believing heart is my magic. Can I really use magic? Gowley's plane lifted off, already headed toward a battle that couldn't wait. For most magic masters, finding the evil witch group somewhere in the vastness of South America would have been like searching for a single ember in a prairie fire. For Gao Li, Lord of Magic, it was child's play. He sent Garuda to scout, used the familiar's search as a starting point, and then released his magic sense. The massive, ancient reservoirs of sorcery the witches had gathered showed up like bonfires in the dark. He followed that heat to the edge of a huge valley and paused. If I send a familiar in from here, they'll detect it, he thought. I can't risk alerting them. Half a second later, he decided not to risk anything. He would drown the place. The valley's shape looked like a hole made for flooding. If these were the kind of people who turned infants into monsters and plotted to destroy the world, drowning them all would not be unjust. Gowley assumed his water form, fitted 5 rings to his fingers, and began to chant. Flowing water, please. Connect, please. Enlarge, please. Storm, please. Flood, please. He summoned an enormous volume of water with the water spell, channeled flood power into it, amplified the force with storm, used enlarge to blow the scale up exponentially, and then used connect to pour that mass of water directly into the witch's lair across space. The valley answered with a thunderous roar as a cataclysmic torrent tore through it, swallowing even the screams. Gao Li, what's that noise? Zatanna asked through mental communication. She had already reached Gotham, and a crowd of magic masters were listening to her live feed. Nothing, Gao Li replied tersely. I just gave the evil witch group a demonstration of what water can do. That should settle things. There was stunned silence on Zatanna's end. Gaywani and Master Ochi and the others exchanged incredulous looks. This group had been impossible to find for so long. Now Gao Li had located them and apparently wiped out their ancient coven with a single strike. Moke, who had seen too many premature celebrations end in disaster, warned, weaning off our guard is dangerous. The witch's dark arts are strange. Don't assume it's over. Dr. Fate agreed. They use methods we don't even know. This isn't simple. Gao Li stayed where he was until the torrent began to subside. He waded into the valley through knee-deep water, sweeping his senses. Are they really all gone? Or did they hide themselves with some dark art? He muttered. Before he could finish, figures crawled out of the trees and shadows, a writhing mass of humanoid things, hundreds, no, thousands of grotesque forms, part child, part adult. Their skin crawled at the sight of them. Monstrous infants, Master Ochi said grimly through the mental grid. They're made from 100-day-old infants. It's one of the evil witch group's signature atrocities. Gaywani's voice was urgent. Each monstrous infant has a terrifying physique. Each is like a miniature magic warrior. There are simply too many. Get out of there. There's a barrier around their lair that seals space magic, Master Ochi added. If you can escape its range, I can locate you with reverse scrying and teleport to help. For the reverse scrying to work, they had to breach the barrier. Gowley's voice dropped low and cold. Made from 100-day-old infants, how many children did these scumbags harm to build an army like that? I was too soft before. They deserve thunder. He shifted into hurricane form, giving himself flight and mobility. Monstrous infants were close combat brutes. Evasion was safer than testing how unlimitedness would hold up against their claws. Gowley rose above the valley and, with a movement that crowned the sky, unleashed a 5-fold elemental assault. Metal, please. Wood, please. Water, please. Fire, please. Earth, please. The 5 elements converged into a cyclonic destructive storm that swept through the valley, cycling and puncturing itself with metal shards, vines, torrents, fire, and crushing earth. Under Gao Li's full output, regardless of the cost, the storm carved the monstrous infants apart. The slaughter was absolute. The witch's ace infantry became meat in a grinder. Where the infants had encircled Gao Li, it suddenly felt like Gao Li was the center of a slaughter. The hidden witches watching from the shadows stared as their cavalry fell. The storm had torn through wards and coverings. Several surviving witches were exposed. "Block him!" one shouted. "The ritual is nearly complete. Stop him!" They surged forward, bracing to fight to the death to finish whatever rite they had been preparing. Gao Li didn't need to see the goal to understand the danger. He cut off the mental line, attached the unlimitedness ring to his waist, and dove. "Unlimitedness, please." In one seamless motion, he slammed like a diamond meteor into the witches, sending a cloud of choking dust into the sky. Screams and limbs flew. Most of the frail sorcerers were blown backward as if they were nothing. Gao Li followed without hesitation. "Yinglong, come." The diamond Yinglong separated from him, becoming the Huihuang sword axe and landing heavy in his hands. Gao Li didn't know where the ritual's focal point was. He didn't need to. If he destroyed the valley, any ritual contained there would be interrupted. He placed the unlimitedness ring against the weapon. High touch. The weapon began to swell, great magic rippling over its form. "Shining strike," he called. An overwhelming unlimitedness array poured into the sky. The Huihuang sword axe expanded and expanded until it loomed as tall as a mountain, its presence a blinding, impossible thing. The remaining witches froze, knees buckling. All living things have an instinctive awe in front of the unknowable. What is he?" one whispered. Their spells struck him and were nothing, like a breeze against a cliff. Then a voice Gao Li recognized, familiar, sardonic, cut through the battlefield. A branch carried by the flood burst open in a green flare. Two figures leapt out, palms raised, and a radiant emerald divine force washed the valley. Gao Li braced. The emerald power swept through the scene without discrimination. In an instant, tree roots erupted across the valley, thorns sharp as spears snaking and impaling the witches, the earth erupting into a choking forest. The transformation was like the first Hokage's deep forest emergence at its most brutal. The Huihuang sword axe, already at the peak of its power, trembled but cleaved through the roots. The obstruction was brief but enough. From the foliage, a human-headed bird carrying a precious pearl burst through, streaking away as if cast toward hell. When the view cleared, the two arrivals were plainly visible. A hulking, mud-and-vine humanoid, and John Constantine. Gao Li's finger tightened on the weapon. If he completed the shining strike now, he might level friend and foe alike. "Are there still enemies?" The plant creature growled in a grunt. Constantine straightened, then smirked. "Wait, he's on our side. I'm John Constantine. We're allies here. Swamp Thing and I were tracking the evil witch group." It clicked for Gao Li. Swamp Thing, the Green's avatar, could appear anywhere through plants and could even ferry living people across. He had been the one tracking the witches. "You two arrived here because of me," Gao Li snapped. "My 5 elements strike probably destroyed their barrier. If I hadn't been interrupted, I could have destroyed the whole ritual site." Constantine blinked. "What are you complaining about? Then stop giving me the side eye and help." Anger heated through Gao Li like a lance. "You fools. Your sudden appearance ruined a chance to stop a world-ending crisis. The witches said the ritual was nearly complete. I could have ended it by leveling the area." Swamp Thing's voice was a low, sorrowful rumble. "We didn't know. John and I didn't. We came in on the same break in their defense. It was a coincidence." Gao Li snorted. "Do you have any idea how many tons my punch represents? If I hadn't realized you were an accident, I'd have killed you." He slapped Constantine for emphasis. The magician slid across the wet ground, hand to cheek, shameless and grinning up through the spray. "You promised you'd help me deal with a messy little problem," Constantine said, still half sarcastic. "I'm just collecting on that favor." "This isn't a messy little problem," Gao Li nearly shouted. Before the argument could escalate further, a chill went through him. "It's too late," he said suddenly, grinding his teeth. "The moment you two meddled, I felt the dark magic, whatever ritual it was, cross space and leave. It's gone." They all fell silent. Swamp Thing's composted face was unreadable. Constantine's grin dropped for the first time. Gao Li stared into the riven valley and the ruined circles and wards. Coincidence fit the facts, but it fit a little too well. He considered the possibility, uneasy, that this was no random confluence of events. Perhaps it had been arranged, like some cosmic pattern nudging the 10 rings at Stark Tower, some great hand manipulating the pieces. The thought chilled him more than the blood on his hands. 29. Section 29. Section 29, Chapter 44. Giant Ferocious Beast Awakens, August 20th, 2023. After a moment's thought, Gao Li decided the immediate problem was more important. Constantine, do you know any mental link magic? Help me reconnect with Xiao Jia. I'm not great at it, so don't expect miracles, John Constantine replied, dropping the jokes now that everyone was serious. He concentrated and began to cast. After Gao Li had severed their telepathic link, Xiao Jia had been trying to re-establish contact repeatedly, but Endless Style's magic immunity kept blocking her. By deliberately relaxing that immunity a little, Gao Li allowed Constantine's magic to reach her. Gao Li, what's happening on your side? Constantine's voice came through the link. Gao Li answered in a low tone. I'm sorry. Although the evil witch group was wiped out, John and Swamp Thing appeared, and I still failed to stop the ritual to awaken the giant ferocious beast. Constantine coughed from the side. We didn't do it on purpose. They didn't care about Constantine's protests. Xiao Jia ignored him and reported, we detected the ritual's success on our side a moment ago. My father hasn't used the reverse spell to help you yet. They're preparing to project their power into hell via spirit realm projection to assist. The Magic Master's realm keeps constant watch over the material world, Fate Tower being one example. So the moment the Witch Coven's ritual succeeded, the Magic Masters received word. That's why Gaiwani hadn't crossed the barrier personally. Hell? Is the giant ferocious beast sleeping in hell? Gao Li asked, curiosity and dread mixing. Were you able to stop the ritual? Xiao Jia shook her head. I'm not sure. So far, only God Nabu and Moke went to hell with Mr. Allen. We haven't heard from them here yet. Gods or god hosts can go into hell in the flesh. Magic masters can't. We have to project our influence through a ritual. By divine law, the dead go to heaven or hell, and that applies to souls. It's extremely hard for ordinary humans to trespass. Even veteran magic masters must use a telepathic helmet, like that used by the hero Mento, to perform a spirit realm projection into hell. All right, quick summary of what's happening here, Gao Li said briskly. I can sense an extremely sinister magic that's doing the work of awakening the giant ferocious beast. This magic is so distinctive that even a general mage would recognize it. You must capture this magic in hell, now. Xiao Jia relayed Gao Li's words faithfully. The magic masters formed a circle, their bodies glowing with ritual light. Understood. Once the spirit realm projection goes through, I'll notify Kent immediately, Master Ochi said. Within seconds, their combined projection was complete, and a scene of hell appeared in the middle of their formation. Kent, can you hear me? Gao Li Wayne says. Before Master Ochi could finish, Dr. Fate spoke with a strange expression. The signature is very distinctive. We found it shortly after arriving in hell. He pushed the image so everyone could see Alan's figure. Alan wasn't in a drunken guise. He had become a green-cloaked, muscular ghost holding a small, bird-headed creature that had a black pearl in its mouth. Humph, what an extremely sinister, evil magic. It actually dragged me from my rest. The ghost's muffled, grand voice echoed across hell. The Magic Masters and Gao Li in South America all breathed easier. The three who had gone into hell were formidable. Moke, who had walked history, Nabu, a dignified god-king of the Order Pantheon, and the ghost who embodied the Lord's wrath. With one thought, he could sweep hell, pierce space and time, and seize that tiny bird-headed thing. For a moment, it looked like he had done just that. Then, unexpectedly, the ghost loosened its grip. The bird-headed creature slipped free and flew away through space. "Ghost, what are you doing?" Moke shouted. The ghost answered coldly, "There is no need to stop the ritual. It is unnecessary. As long as I am present, I will suppress everything. A mere giant, ferocious beast? I can crush it with a flick of my hand. Why stop what will serve the Lord's will?" Nabu flared in alarm and released divine power from his helmet, but the ghost dispersed it with a mere wave. "You," the ghost sneered. "I already said there's no need to stop it. Will you defy the will of the spirit of vengeance? I am the executor of the Lord's wrath. Let the giant ferocious beast awaken. I will destroy that ultimate darkness for the Lord. Nabu seethed but dared not argue further. The ghost's divine authority and the heaven forces backing it were overwhelming. Watching through the spirit realm projection, the magic master's pupils all dilated in shock. Is the ghost mad? Is this some conspiracy by the evil witch group? By the time Xiao Jia told Gao Li what had happened, he was clenching and unclenching his fists, his blood pressure rising. This was beyond foolish. Even if he can truly crush it, isn't this gambling with the life of the universe? Gao Li thought, picturing Alfred, Xiao Jia, his friends and family, everything at stake. He realized he couldn't rely on these capricious gods. Constantine, Gao Li said, urgency in his voice, do you know any magic that can send my body and soul together into hell? Constantine frowned. I know a rite that can send one's soul into hell temporarily, and another that curses someone to hell, but I don't recommend it. Spells that throw a person's body and soul into hell are woven with malice. They do awful things to the target. Gao Li frowned deeply. Endless style might protect him from cursed magics, but that protection would also make such a spell ineffective. If he removed his immunity to accept the spell, he'd be powerless. It was a paradox. Before he could decide, Xiao Jia cried out, "Oh no, the giant ferocious beast has awakened." P.S. Although it seems the ghost let go of the bird-headed creature for no reason here, in the original Dark Knight's Metal event, the ghost indeed encountered that creature and foolishly released it because he believed he could crush the giant ferocious beast himself. Chapter 45. If I don't go to hell, who will? August 20th, 2023. Xiao Jia didn't have to say more. In the next heartbeat, Gao Li, Swamp Thing, and Constantine all felt it. The very tremor from the giant ferocious beast's revival rippled through the universe. Endless, terrifying energy set off dreadful anomalies across hell. The sky of hell had deepened into an impossibly darker black. The elements tore themselves apart. Hell is its own world with its own cosmic stars, and now those stars were being swallowed by the beast's aura. Galaxies shuddered as if their foundations were being shaken. Everything felt like it was sliding toward the end of days. An entity in hell can affect the material world's magic from there? As the Lord of Magic, Gao Li felt it more keenly than anyone. A cold bead of sweat ran down his temple. This was a supreme existence he had never seen or imagined, beyond words. The ambient magic churned like thousands of colossal dragons rampaging through everything. The aftershocks rolled like angry waves. Thankfully, the Order Pantheon's suppression averted immediate catastrophe. Nabu had united the green of all things, the black of decay, the red of life, and other forces into the Order Pantheon precisely to restrain disasters at critical moments. Even so, the spillover made mages everywhere feel helpless and terrified, as if ants pounding futilely against a flood. What is this power? What happened? Why is it like this? Questions rose across the globe. Mages could feel unprecedented energy surging in, and with that surge came risk. Any misstep could cause a fatal backlash. In heaven, Michael warned Raphael, the giant ferocious beast has awakened. We must dispatch the archangelic host. They hurried to mobilize. Silver City trembled beneath the invisible storm. Even souls not connected to the magical world felt a nameless despair and fear wash over them. Across the divine realms, the great pantheons sealed themselves off. No god dared reveal their face. Those who could watch timelines saw a river of time beginning to crack, space-time itself rent by the beast's presence. Hindu, Egyptian, Greek, Norse pantheons and others all monitored hell's shifts. This Dark Knight's Metal event threatened to change the future itself. Hell was ground zero. Fire flared, waters surged, the land split, storms intensified. The elements fought each other. Fire became more ravenous, while water rose like a collapsing mountain. The earth cleaved, the wind screamed. Who awakened me? A vast vertical pupil opened at the center of the catastrophe, the giant ferocious beast. Its body was pure darkness. Its aura devoured light like a gravitational maw. The stars seemed like dust in its presence. Not good. Nabu and Moke dropped their quarrel and rushed toward the beast. Demon armies mobilized. The demon kings who ruled hell would not accept a new supreme power. In an unprecedented move, demons and archangels alike marshaled their forces. hell and heaven aligning against the same enemy. On Earth, Gowli forced himself to steady his breath. "I guess I really have no choice but to go," he said, grinding his teeth. He wasn't seeking glory or blindly courageous. He had felt the giant ferocious beast's power and understood the threat was real. If he hid and failed to stop it, the world would end and he would die with everyone else. If there was any chance to alter the outcome, he had to take it. Then an idea struck him. The beast's aura was so overwhelming that it stole the luster from the starry sky and skewed ambient magic toward itself, creating vast regions of magical vacuum, like a dark graveyard. In a way, it functioned like a massive gravitational body. Spatial dimensions bent and sank toward it. In that field, the cosmic skater's random movement skill, ordinarily unpredictable, would likely be drawn toward the giant ferocious beast. Like placing a marble on a flat map, its final resting place may be random. But if the map is bent into a funnel, the marble will almost certainly end up in the funnel. If Gowli could use that tendency, if he could bait or harness that pull, perhaps the random transport could bring him straight to the beast. Anyway, endless style will keep me alive in whatever environment I land in. Even if I pick the wrong form, it'll last long enough to reactivate tomorrow. I'll take the gamble. Gowli drew a deep breath and steeled himself. His heart hammered. The plan was full of unknowns and extremely dangerous. "Xiaojia, I don't know if I can keep a telepathic link with you after this. If I lose contact, have your father end the spirit projection and try to teleport me back." That was his second safety net. If he lost the link, he would switch forms at the first chance and let the dispelling magic take him. Zatanna stared, stunned. "Where are you going? If I don't go to hell, who will?" He didn't wait for more. Gowli activated the skill. Whoosh. Swamp Thing and Constantine watched, mouths open, as Gowli vanished like a candle snuffed by wind. Chapter 46, Shaking Hell. When Gowli opened his eyes, he was standing on a scorched, blood-red plain. The ground was laced with fissures and rivers of lava. The sky hung low and hazy, tinted the color of a dying sun. It looked like the end of the world. He tapped into magic and felt it immediately. This place thrummed with chaotic power unlike any realm he knew, and something else loomed in his senses. An enormous presence he could not ignore. This was hell. Gowli moved toward the titanic presence he could feel. The demons he passed confirmed his suspicion. "What's that? Is it human? Looks tasty." The demons noticed him at once. He had arrived intact, radiating a living, vibrant aura that hell itself lacked. He stood out like a bonfire in a black night. Hungry demons surged, red-eyed and slavering. Fresh soul and flesh were temptations they could not refuse. Gowli didn't stop. He kept moving and summoned the Huihuang sword axe. High touch. The axe swelled in his grip until it dominated the dim landscape, and a lattice of magic sigils flared around it. Before the closest demons could do anything, Gowli brought the weapon down. Shining strike! Boom! The explosion rocked the sky and sent lesser imps tumbling. Silence fell like a cloak. The surviving demons gaped. "Move aside! Don't block me. I'm in a hurry." They stared until Gowli raised the axe and pointed it at them. Then panic spread. "Oh no! He's serious! Run!" The demons who had been charging from further away turned tail and fled. The ones that had been closer found themselves destroyed in an instant. The axe reduced them to dust. Those who could see the details shuddered. Spells, artifacts, even magically hardened flesh shattered as if they were nothing. The axe sliced through demon ranks with the ease of cutting cake. Provoking him was unthinkable. Far above, a different scene played out. The giant ferocious beast had been rising from the deepest pits of hell, heading toward heaven. Armies from both sides had gathered to meet it. Nabu and other gods were present. Moke watched from a distance with arms folded, confident he could handle the beast himself. "Giant ferocious beast, halt! You cannot step beyond this point," Michael declared, taking a stand to defend heaven's entrance. The creature still hadn't crossed into the material world, and angels were forbidden from entering hell, so they did not intend to pursue. Etrigan, the Demon Legion's leader, growled and charged. "A bunch of cowards! If you won't fight, I will!" He led a wave of ferocious attacks at the giant ferocious beast, forbidden spells, city-destroying curses, and some angels watched with alarm. Nothing happened. Those offensive magics detonated before they reached the beast, then vanished into nothing, swallowed as if by a hole. Etrigan's roar froze mid-word. A black shadow flashed, and he was gone. "The giant ferocious beast ate him?" whispered someone. Nabu and Moke, the top-tier powerhouses, watched in stunned silence. Etrigan was no mere footnote. He was a powerful warrior, and yet he had been swallowed before he could react. As the beast continued to rise, Nabu forced himself to act. He flew forward and intoned an oath. "By the name of the God King of Order, you shall not set foot in the material world." Light poured from him as he invoked order. The 7 Order artifacts converged around Dr. Fate, layering until he became the complete Order god system. He was King Nabu in full. In the celestial realm, Zeus, who had been observing discreetly, raised an eyebrow. "So that's how Nabu forms a god system. Not bad," he murmured. Nabu's status did not match Zeus's raw power, but the majesty of a god king nevertheless made the space around him seem as hard as steel. Nabu pointed like a divine finger and spoke, then vanished into the darkness before his sentence finished. "What?" Zeus and the other god kings were genuinely alarmed. They could imagine fighting and possibly defeating Nabu with a great battle, but no one expected an instant, effortless annihilation. If the giant ferocious beast could dismiss the Order God King like a trifling obstacle, then it was on a scale far beyond any God King's comprehension. On Earth, the magic masters reeled. Dr. Fate was not only a friend, but the embodiment of the Order God King to human mages, the apogee of human magical ascension. To see him destroyed so casually, along with the rest of the complete Order God system, struck them with a chill. In hell, Moke watched with equal disbelief, and then with cold calculation. "The giant ferocious beast will reach the Lord's Garden of Eden soon," someone warned. "Moke, will you stand by and watch the Lord's pasture be defiled?" Moke snorted. "No need to rush. I will clean this up." Then his body began to swell, rapidly, terrifyingly. In moments, Moke had grown taller than the Himalayas. Then he kept growing until he dwarfed continents. Observers whispered in awe, "Is that the true power of God's wrath? The spirit of vengeance?" They hadn't finished speaking when Moke became the size of a planet. "How far will he go?" someone cried. He kept growing until he was star-sized, a body like the sun, a living star in hell itself. Against that star-like mass, planets were marbles. Fortunately for reality, hell's laws were different here. Moke's expansion didn't collapse the cosmos by gravity. He loomed, burning with confidence. "I am the wrath of God," Moke bellowed. "The embodiment of vengeance, giant ferocious beast, submit to me." The ghost's magnificent roar rolled through hell as he reached out to strike the giant ferocious beast. Though the colossal palm seemed larger than a planet, it was shaped by precise spatial laws. Its power and volume condensed to match the beast's size, so nothing leaked away. The single blow left everyone awed. It was hard to imagine the terror packed into that compressed space. The ghost's strike truly shattered the beast's aura and slammed into its body with full force. Thunder and light erupted. For a moment the heavens fell silent, and the sun and moon seemed to dim. "Humph. As I thought," the ghost declared, pride ringing in his voice. "Before the Lord's radiance, the giant ferocious beast is nothing." Moke and the heavenly camp exulted. Powerful observers like Michael could already picture the scene, the ghost's giant hand pressing down, actually forcing the beast back a little. "The ghost is invincible," they cried. "Humiliate that thing." Then the giant ferocious beast spoke, flat and emotionless. "What are you doing?" The ghost faltered. For a moment, no one understood the beast's reaction. Wasn't the outcome obvious? Then darkness began to unfurl around the beast. The god kings of the heavenly realm went pale. They recognized the same spatial technique the ghost had just used. The place the ghost had struck was not the beast's true body at all. The god kings saw it in an instant. The black protrusion was like a pore on the beast's hide, only slightly indented by the ghost's blow. The sight of the beast's true form was unbearable to many. Demons and angels whose realms were weaker screamed and convulsed. Their minds and eyes were flooded with too much information and seared as if overloaded. "Impossible! No, this can't be." The ghost, who took the first brunt, saw the truth as well, and his face crumpled with disbelief. But his denial changed nothing. Darkness flashed from the beast's true form and swallowed the ghost completely. That was the last Gowli saw of the ghost as he reached the scene. "The invincible ghost has fallen," he blurted into the telepathic link to Zatanna. The link was still open. Zatanna herself could not have crossed two realms by telepathy alone, but a ring of magic masters nearby had maintained a spirit realm projection, and Zatanna's magic rode that channel. Now she had no energy to reply. Hell fell deathly silent, filled with a thick, suffocating despair. No one had expected that even the ghost could be undone so quickly by the beast. No, none of this is right, the beast murmured, almost to itself. Its gaze swept the battlefield, searching, and landed on the magic masters who were peering through the projection. Zatanna's scream burst into Gao Li's ears. Terrified, panicked. No, don't! Every magic master's face drained of color. The beast's stare made the magic within them boil. It threatened to burn their bodies from the inside out. Shut it off! Close it, now! Witchcraft Master Sargon howled through clenched teeth, drenched in sweat as he tried to suppress the surge. The heat was so intense, sweat simply vaporized on contact. It won't, Master Ochi gasped. The spirit realm projection is being forced open. We can't close it. The beast's gaze was pushing into the projection itself, making it impossible to sever the link. Magic flared uncontrollably. Flesh began to warp. Zatanna, desperate, chanted a counterspelling to cool them, but the moment her magic touched them, it was as if she were electrocuted. Darkness transferred back through the channel. She collapsed, screaming and rolling on the ground. Xiaojia! No! Giwani watched with eyes wide as knives, his heart breaking. He could do nothing. His own powers were in chaos and wouldn't form. Smoke rose from his body. He hovered on the edge of spontaneous combustion. Gao Li heard all of it and felt the crushing force of the beast's gaze through their shared link. He had only seconds to decide. Intervene and face the beast's might directly, or stand back and let the magic masters die. Most of those masters had never opposed him. Many treated him kindly, even as a junior. They had come here to brave danger and seek a way for humanity, to stop the evil witch group's plot. They were heroes, and Gao Li could not simply watch them perish. Zatanna's agonized wails snapped him out of hesitation. He made his choice. Immediately the pressure on Zatanna eased. Her consciousness, hazy, forced itself up as sweat ran down her face. The magic master's screams faltered and then stopped. The room filled with heavy, ragged breaths. We're alive? Did someone save us? Sargon croaked. Giwani stared at the spirit realm projection, disbelief on his face. Through the shimmering portal, they saw a figure appear. Gao Li, standing squarely in the path of the beast's gaze, his body radiating a diamond-like light. He was like a living tower, blocking the stare for everyone on the other side. Did he just shield us? One master whispered. It must be him, another said. He's standing right there in the line of sight. He's the one who saved us. Word of the miracle spread beyond the projection. The gods watched, their attention fixed. Even those on the thrones leaned forward to look. Mok's mouth hung open. With his insight, he began to put pieces together. Zeus muttered, incredulous and greedy at once. If anyone could hold that gaze, it would be him, he said. Odin rose as well. It's him, the second Lord of Magic. Madame Shangdu's earlier remark echoed in their minds. Those who knew the highest arts could identify the Lord of Magic by the endless style aura. That aura, now shimmering around the figure who had taken the beast's stare, marked Gao Li unmistakably. He had appeared from nowhere and faced the beast in a way that even god-kings and the ghost could not. Where they had fallen, he stood immovable. To every eye, his feet elevated him above the previous great powers. They did not know what Gao Li was enduring. He felt as if he were wading through a raging flood. His power normally rendered violent magic harmless, like turning churning black water into clear spring water, but the beast's gaze was like an oceanic torrent. Even transformed, the sheer volume of it threatened to sweep him away, leaving him dizzy and disoriented. The beast watched him, intrigued. Unlike the others, it could see the process, how Gao Li's magic neutralized and absorbed the onslaught rather than resisting it head-on. The beast's whisper was soft, curious. Section 32. He watched the colossal force he had unleashed at will disintegrate the instant it met Gao Li. The attack collapsed in part on contact. Though inertia still carried some impact, it no longer had that terrifying, world-shattering power. Let me try again. The giant ferocious beast whispered like an ancient god, and the dark fluctuations that had instantly killed Nabu and Shadow reappeared, swarming toward Gao Li. P.S. Thank you, Chenju661, for the 100-point reward. Chapter 49, Endless Lord. This was the giant ferocious beast's true attack. Not long ago, a casual glance from him had been enough to make all living things reel, like the breath of an exhale blowing away dust. Now, however, the beast had consciously focused his power on Gao Li. The difference was absolute. Boom! A destructive fluctuation like the collapse of heaven and earth slammed into Gao Li. Behind his mask, Gao Li's pupils constricted. The armor covering his body emitted a mournful groan, as if about to crack apart. He stood like a reef in a raging river, being scourged by a monstrous riptide. Has the giant ferocious beast become angry? Everyone present blurted. The beast had never so clearly singled someone out. Even Shadow, the face of heaven's power, had only earned a fleeting manifestation from the beast, an almost lazy overturn that casually handled him. Now the beast was targeting this Lord of Magic. Can the Lord of Magic actually withstand that? Zeus held his breath, watching with urgent interest. If another Lord of Magic fell, could they seize that magic and use it against Hecate? The other god kings watched with similar calculations. Probably not. Shadow was killed outright by the giant ferocious beast. The beast just woke up and hasn't borrowed any new magic. There's no magic debt. If there's no magic debt, the Lord of Magic is finished. Their reasoning converged. A Lord of Magic's greatest strength came from collecting debts. Against an entity with which he had no debt relationship, the Lord of Magic's title was far less useful. Worse, cracks were already appearing across Gao Li's body, signs he was being overwhelmed. This is terrible. The magic content in that dark power is far lower than the power of order. Gao Li clenched his teeth. Even his skeleton creaked as his mind raced for a countermeasure. I was arrogant. The same amount of magic might account for 70 to 80% of an order-based power, but in that dark fluctuation, it's only 2 or 3%. More accurately, the dark fluctuations contained far richer, more varied advanced energies than mere order power. Not just divine power and magic, but many strange forces Gao Li had never seen. His defenses against non-pure magic attacks depended on the magic component inside them. If the attacker was built on the power of order, where magic was the load-bearing framework, removing the magic made it collapse instantly. But if magic was only one aspect of an all-encompassing force, taking it away would be like knocking down a few secondary walls. The whole might eventually disintegrate, but not quickly, and what remained would still be terribly potent. Other than trying to force the endless power, I have no other way, Gao Li thought. He felt himself nearing the limit. Life or death depends on whether I can endure this. He forced his hand to the driver and activated the endless magic ring again. Unlimitedness. Night magic surged under Gao Li's control. The phantom of the diamond dragon and a towering pillar of light rose to surround him. Gao Li roared as if burning himself alive. The confrontation reached a fever pitch. Even ordinary demons and archangels could feel it. The dark fluctuations, usually formless and invisible, were forced by Gao Li's resistance to reveal scattered void patterns. The destructive aftershock rolled outward, sending the armies of heaven and hell tumbling. But the place where Gao Li stood, like the eye of the storm, was eerily calm. Unbelievable. Gods murmured. He had actually held the giant ferocious beast's first wave. No god would confidently say they could do the same. Unlimitedness. Humans and gods alike whispered the word. It was the only incantation the Lord of Magic had used to unleash his full power. This endless power was clearly Gao Li's true strength. At that moment, the giant ferocious beast spoke again, having completely discerned the nature of endless style. His tone was calm, neither joyful nor angry. But he did not launch a second strike. Instead, he said words that stunned all three realms. Endless Lord, who commands night magic, please come into my body for a talk. Magic masters, hell demon lords, archangels, and god kings all gaped, nearly dropping their jaws. What had the beast just said? He had politely invited the Lord of Magic to enter his body? For Shadow, the beast had shown no more than contempt. Now the beast called out a name and spoke respectfully. So that new magic is called night magic? Endless Lord. No wonder the incantation was unlimitedness. If he can withstand that dark power, the title fits. Under stunned and skeptical gazes, Gao Li, still recovering, was surprised too. Night magic hadn't even become known yet. How did the giant ferocious beast, newly revived, know it? Could it be the beast had understood everything about night magic with a single strike? Its essence, origin, and development? It was almost omniscience. No, I shouldn't think about that. This is an invitation. Gao Li forced himself back to the immediate situation. The beast's power far outstripped his. If the beast wished to harm him, no trickery was necessary. Thinking strategically, maybe the beast couldn't forcibly pull him into its body without killing him, and therefore sought his voluntary cooperation. That might explain Etrigan, Nabu, and Shadow's earlier disappearances. Perhaps they were absorbed into the beast's body rather than left as corpses. Their forms vanished in darkness. What did the beast want? The more Gao Li thought, the more curious he became. He had little left to resist, so he nodded. All right, come in. Thank you. The giant ferocious beast blinked his vertical pupils, and absolute darkness engulfed Gao Li. Chapter 50, Power of Creation. After being swallowed by darkness, Gao Li felt as if he had entered a wondrous void. The space was pitch black and utterly still, no direction, no gravity, only profound quiet. Giant ferocious beast? Gao Li called. I am here, the beast answered. He slowly took shape, a smaller, miniature version of his external form. Before Gao Li could ask more, the beast sighed. Indeed, your aura seemed familiar. Gao Li froze. His mind conjured wild imaginings. Had they shared past lives? Was he some great figure reborn? Had the beast singled him out for reasons buried in an old connection? The beast continued, dispelling such fantasies. I was sleeping when something forcefully broke into the 10,000 sky mirror and startled me. Feeling it closely now, that thing was likely you. Gao Li. So that was it. The beast's awakening had been triggered by that intrusion. Not Gao Li personally, but the system that had flung him into the 10,000 sky mirror. He quickly shifted blame inward, no intention of being responsible for a primordial awakening. What he did not know was that even without him, the beast would have awakened later during a major event, the crisis on Infinite Earths. His presence had merely hastened the timing. This is probably good for me, the giant ferocious beast went on. You are from outside the world. Perhaps you know answers I cannot find among the god kings inside the world. Gao Li asked, baffled, what could you not know? With your power you should be near omniscient, shouldn't you? The beast rumbled. I seem to know everything, and yet I seem to know nothing. I know things I do not need to know, but I lack knowledge I require. Therefore my greatest question is, who exactly am I? I thought the God King atop the universe would know, but he does not. As he spoke, a scene unfolded for Gao Li, the absorbed Nabu. When the beast had asked him who he was, Nabu, true to his temper, had cursed. You are the embodiment of evil, a stupid swamp that keeps us from the eternal holy light. Nabu was not without fear of death. He simply figured that if he was doomed, he might as well get in some last words. The giant ferocious beast did not become enraged. He pondered a moment, then slowly shook his head. That's not the answer I want. Your reply only taught me contempt. The scene dissolved, and the giant ferocious beast stood in the void speaking to Gao Li. When the phantom demon attacked me, I sensed a nature like my own. So I pulled him in too, hoping he could tell me who I am. Like with Nabu, the giant ferocious beast had tried questioning the phantom demon. The phantom demon had been stubborn and arrogant. I am here to defeat you, not to debate. I do not need to answer your questions. The giant ferocious beast stared for a few seconds. How could someone who had been killed have the gall to speak so defiantly? The phantom demon, launching into a reflexive tirade, then seemed to realize his situation and roared, losing a bit of composure. If you must know, then I will tell you. You are merely darkness that ought to be burned away by the spirit of vengeance, so that all may fear the wrathful flames of the Lord and comprehend the cost of defying him. Your answer only taught me arrogance. It is still not the answer I seek, the giant ferocious beast said, disappointed. The scene vanished again. Only the beast and Gao Li remained, facing each other in the void. So, endless Lord, who controls night magic, tell me plainly, who exactly am I? Gao Li fell into thought. This was not an easy question. Unlike Clark's well-known origins, Gao Li, who hadn't been steeped in DC lore, didn't know the giant ferocious beast's identity and and had never encountered it in his previous life. Still, forums and netizens loved debating who was the strongest, and Gao Li had often read that if the Marvel Universe's top was the one, above all, the DC Multiverse's ultimate was the fully realized supreme god. The giant ferocious beast is called the ultimate darkness, the ultimate of darkness, he mused. The phantom demon's attack felt similar to the beast. If the phantom demon is the wrath of God, and his power comes from God, maybe there's a relation. On one side, the ultimate dark force. On the other, the ultimate light force. Religions love dualistic designs. Perhaps, Gao Li continued aloud, you're related to God, maybe his opposite, or another side. Light and darkness are always symmetrical. That suggestion was blasphemous. Nabu or the phantom demon would never say such a thing. But this was hell, where countless beings wished to blaspheme. The giant ferocious beast's tone turned regretful. Someone else has already called me that. A memory flashed. Etrigan, who had been drawn in earlier, shouting, Giant ferocious beast, you are evil, you are darkness, the opposite of God. The scene cracked away, and the beast commented, even if that is true, it merely speaks to my destiny. It doesn't answer who I actually am. No, I don't mean destiny, Gao Li said, spreading his hands. The giant ferocious beast looked at him, surprised. I mean identity. You already know about night magic and its system, right? Yes, the beast replied. It's astonishing. It has no connection to the creative force called the God Realm, so it must be knowledge you brought in from outside the 10,000 sky mirror. Gao Li paused. What is the God Realm? Well, if that is one of the 7 positive creative forces, the giant ferocious beast explained. Divine power and magic are contained within it. Magic condensed an incarnation of itself, Hecate, who became the ancestor of magic. Then are there negative creative forces too? Gao Li asked. Yes, the beast said. The 7 positives are collectively called anti-crisis energy, and there are 7 negatives, crisis energy. They correspond in pairs, 14 creative forces in total. For example, the opposite of the God realm is the wind of nothingness, which extinguishes gods and demons alike. Gao Li listened, thinking the wind of nothingness sounded a bit like the abilities of the endless. I have answered your question. May I now ask you mine? The beast said softly, though a hint of impatience threaded through the tone. Opportunities to learn cosmic secrets from a super-tier being were rare. Gao Li knew he shouldn't exploit this forever. All right, Gao Li said. Since you know the night magic system, you should understand what a phantom demon is. The phantom demon is born from the deepest despair, the beast answered. But you show no trace of despair. Because magicians are born from the exact opposite, hope. They transcend despair and gain magic through hope. To illustrate, Gao Li released the diamond Ying Long from within him. The dragon unfurled and immediately froze when the giant ferocious beast's vast eyes fixed on him. His wings nearly went limp. Ying Long had been defending Gao Li from outside. Now he was in terrifyingly close contact. How had Gao Li provoked such a being? Ahem, Gao Li cleared his throat, embarrassed by Ying Long's acting, and then recalled him. Phantom demons embody despair. Magicians embody hope. They oppose and depend on each other, and sometimes they can merge. So I suspect you have a similar relationship with God. Not night magic, but in designation, perhaps you're like God's phantom demon, the counterpart to God's hope. The giant ferocious beast considered this for a long moment. Finally, he asked, How can I test it? Gao Li shrugged. Simple. As ultimate darkness, you shouldn't possess light, right? That's correct. Darkness would not be pure otherwise. Okay, we can try a reverse experiment. Use your dark power to create a phantom demon of your own. If you're right, the phantom demon, being your opposite, should transform into light, maybe even God's power. That will prove your identity. The beast understood immediately. Very well, I will try. For the first time, the giant ferocious beast showed a serious emotion, nervousness. He concentrated, and a deep, abyssal black sphere began to condense before him. Gao Li felt his gaze being physically pulled toward it. This black sphere felt worse than a black hole. Time, space, and light were swallowed by it. It was the beast's most fundamental power. This is my core, the beast said. It represents me. Let us see whether I can bring God's power from nothing. Under both of their intense gazes, the dark sphere began to change. Gao Li had imagined darkness splitting open to reveal light, but the reality matched his deduction. In an instant, the black sphere transformed entirely into a globe of holy light. God's power poured out, suffusing the area with a sacred, solemn aura that compelled kneeling and reverence. Any archangel present would have found it purer than the divine power in their own chest, like the purest energy personally given by God. Gao Li nearly forgot to breathe as the light sphere shifted toward a shape. Then, boom, hell shook. A colossal hand reached down from above heaven, and every angel dropped to their knees in stunned reverence. Gao Li and the beast looked up at the descending, radiant hand and understood at once the hand was reaching for this very place. Is it coming for the beast? For me? For the new phantom demon? Gao Li's thoughts ran. Why now and not earlier? Time seemed to dilate. The giant ferocious beast spoke calmly. Endless Lord, your idea is correct. As you showed with the phantom demon and the magician, light and darkness are essentially one, opposing yet indispensable. Coexistence is the highest truth. The beast raised his hand as the radiant hand descended. From hell, a gigantic black palm rose to meet it. Two immense hands, one abyssal black from below, one pure white from above, approached as if to hold the sky itself. People who didn't understand feared the world would be destroyed. But the two colossal hands simply met in a handshake. No cataclysm, just reconciliation. Gao Li stared at the titanic grip and had a fleeting, absurd mental image of a Nokia boot screen before the invisible impact from above flowed through the beast's arm and into his body. The almost formed holy light phantom demon collapsed into a formless mass of pure energy and dispersed. Gao Li blinked, a little disappointed. He had wanted to see what a phantom demon born of light would look like. I will return to the Sea of No Light to sleep, the giant ferocious beast announced. His voice was calmer and gentler than before. Before I go, I would like to give you a thank you gift. Gao Li's heart leapt. What could an ultimate being give? He didn't press, but asked out of courtesy, Are you all right? Why sleep now? I am well, the beast said. I just awakened by accident. I should have stayed asleep in the Sea of No Light. The Sea of No Light was the lowest layer of hell, the giant ferocious beast's exclusive bedchamber. Now that I understand light and darkness must balance, and that God is about to leave this universe, if I remain awake, the balance will tip. Darkness would overwhelm light. I must sleep so the proportions remain steady. P.S. Thanks to Winter White Shoes for the 2,000-point reward. Gao Li heard another shocking secret. God was leaving? Could God just leave the universe whenever he pleased? So you really are connected to God, Gao Li said. Then why is the phantom, the embodiment of God's wrath, so useless against you? The giant ferocious beast explained. The phantom's power comes from God's bestowal. He is the spirit of vengeance, the executor of God's wrath. His strength is determined by what God intends him to do. God grants him the power necessary for that purpose. Right now, the phantom is not at his peak. Gao Li finally understood. The phantom was essentially a high-level agent whose power had upper and lower limits, like vice admirals or warlords of the sea in One Piece. The strongest could rival admirals and emperors, the weakest could be beaten by supernovas. Then the giant ferocious beast added, This primordial power is the only time I've used my full strength since I awakened. I've erased every imprint on it. I'll give it to you. It's yours now. Gao Li's face wanted to light up, but the smile froze. A ball of energy, what did he do with it? It sounded invaluable, but he had no idea how to carry or use it. What he didn't know was that this primordial power, transformed into the attribute of light, had become the purest fragment of God's power in the entire universe at the moment God's main body departed. There was nothing else like it. Even the angels of Silver City, draining themselves blind, couldn't find anything closer to God. How do I carry it? Gao Li asked, dejected. Put your own imprint on the primordial power, the giant ferocious beast said. Aren't you a lord of magic? If you stamp your power imprint on it, you become the master of this God's power. You can store and retrieve it within your body at will. After his connection to the Sea of Laws, Gao Li had indeed learned to use power imprints without a teacher, essentially an innate skill for a lord of magic. He applied his infinite magic to stamp the sphere. Instantly, it became as easy to control as an arm and slid smoothly into his body. I'll go back to the Sea of No Light to sleep. The giant ferocious beast's voice softened. Gao suddenly thought of something. Wait, could you give me one more thing? Hmm? The beast asked, groggy. What else do you want? Embarrassed, Gao said, It only occurred to me when I put the primordial power into my body. I still have a problem I haven't solved. You know I'm from outside the 10,000 sky mirror. When I leave and go back, only my soul can pass through. Is there any way for my soul to carry magic? Originally, the phantom demon resided in the mental world. In theory, Gao could research how to bring it over via the connection between the mental world and the soul. But Gao wasn't an ordinary lord of magic. Because his body had no magic cycle when he fused with the phantom, he couldn't form a normal magic circuit with it. Instead, he had integrated the phantom demon into his own magic to secure a continuous supply of power without a true cycle. That integration let him ascend, gaining the ultimate form known as endless style, but it also meant the phantom demon had merged with Gaoli's physical body and could no longer be separated and stuffed into the mental world. Even if he managed to take his soul back to the Marvel Universe, the body he would return to there wouldn't be integrated with the phantom demon's magic. He still wouldn't be able to use magic. The giant ferocious beast fell quiet a moment. He seemed to know the perfect solution before Gao even finished thinking it. I've just devised a secret technique that can infuse magic directly into the soul, he said. But the soul is a poor vessel for magic. Tolerance varies from person to person. He was telling the truth. Magic or divine power is best stored in a physical body or in specially made artifacts. The gods of the Order God system resemble divine artifacts because their own bodies cannot withstand the pressure of divine power. Their souls cannot contain much of it, so they create divine artifacts to hold both soul and power. Instinctively, Gao felt the knowledge of the secret technique flood into his mind. Years of practice, a mountain of experience and skills dropped into him as if he had spent centuries mastering the method. Holy crap, was this a spiritual empowerment? Experience and skills appearing out of nowhere. Before he could finish marveling, the scene shifted. The giant ferocious beast's last words echoed, "Thank you again, Endless Lord, and good night." As if making a formal farewell, those words rolled outward as sound waves, and the giant ferocious beast began to sink into the sea of no light. Gao, Etrigan, Naboo, and the Phantom, who had been swallowed earlier, were all expelled unharmed. But their exits differed. The giant ferocious beast had transferred Gao directly out of space, while the other three were spat out, as if the beast were clearing his throat. The difference in treatment was obvious to anyone paying attention, including the trio, who felt like pre-sleep phlegm. "What the hell just happened when I was sucked in?" the Phantom demanded. "Why did the beast leave so suddenly?" Naboo grumbled. "Why was he treated well while I was spat out?" Etrigan raged. The Phantom, deeply mortified, snorted and pretended to be dead, slipping into a deep sleep and leaving the awkwardness for a bewildered Alan. Naboo, embarrassed as well, abruptly switched back to Dr. Kent, leaving Etrigan staring in disbelief. They were truly the worst hosts for their own guests. As word spread, everyone who had been watching gradually pieced together what had happened. The giant ferocious beast's crisis had ended, apparently, because of the Endless Lord. They had heard the beast thank the Endless Lord and see him off with respect while ignoring the others. That alone was enough to convince them the Endless Lord had saved the universe. "Endless Lord, the Endless Lord saved the entire universe," people shouted. "Long live the Endless Lord! Blessed be the Endless Lord!" Those who had been paralyzed by fear and despair began to cheer with relief. With the beast gone, all eyes turned to Gao Li. The attention made him uneasy. His magic reserves were almost drained from the battle. He was at his weakest. If anyone attacked now, Gao Li might really fall. "Xiao Xia, tell your dad to summon me now." Gao Li telepathically called Zatanna and used his last magic to shift into a Kamen Rider wizard metal style none of them had seen. "Dad, come help me." On Earth, Zatanna quickly pulled Gaewani aside, dragging him to a secluded spot and conjuring an opaque, soundproof barrier. "Xiao, what's wrong?" Gaewani asked, exhausted. "I just went through a magic riot. I'm still tired." "Dad, can you summon someone back from hell?" Zatanna asked. "Don't worry, it's a living person, not an evil spirit or a demon." "You have a friend in hell?" Gaewani forced himself to liven up. Tell me the name, and I'll bring him back to the material world. As long as the subject was still alive, it wasn't a violation of the boundary between life and death. Giovanni believed he could do it. Zatanna hesitated. I can't tell you the real name, but try his title first. If that fails, use his full name. Giovanni waved a hand. Reverse magic is flexible. If the title locates him, it's enough. Zatanna took a breath. I'm going to say it, Dad. Please don't be afraid. Do you have to be so dramatic? Giovanni muttered. I'm a dignified lord of magic. I've had professional training. I won't be afraid. It's the Endless Lord, Zatanna said. Crack, Giovanni's legs gave out and he collapsed onto the lawn. Who? It's the Endless Lord, the giant ferocious beast mentioned, Zatanna said, helping him up. The Endless Lord is your savior now. Endless Lord? What? Giovanni couldn't close his mouth. His own daughter actually knew the Endless Lord, the supreme being who had conversed with the giant ferocious beast. The gap felt as wide as a beggar discovering his daughter knew the leader of the strongest nation. Anyway, Dad, cast the spell, Zatanna urged. Gowli's urgency thrummed through her. Giovanni stammered and mispronounced several times from sheer nervousness before finally completing the incantation. With a whoosh, Gowli vanished from hell and reappeared on the west coast of the United States. Giovanni's spell hadn't been precise. Landing in the U.S. was lucky. Back on Earth, Gowli felt like he'd reached base camp. He checked in with Fadian Group and booked a suite at a 5-star hotel. After what he'd done in hell, the impact he'd caused should be immeasurable. He deserved proper rewards. Gowli opened the system with anticipation, but his smile froze. S-rank! Damn system! Where's my influence? Did you embezzle my rewards? He cursed the sky. He raged for a bit, but the system was just a machine, running set programs. S-rank was a high reward, but Gowli had just saved the entire universe. It felt wrong. Calmer now, he reviewed the incident from start to finish. From years of using the system, he knew it was rigid, but that had value. Reward tiers reflected events and consequences he might not yet understand. Once, during a terrorist attack, he'd earned his first SS rank prize in his life. He'd later discovered his actions had inadvertently affected an absolute fixed point in time, an alteration that could have led to the universe's destruction. There were other knock-on effects he hadn't known at the time, changes to future heroes, etc. Maybe the awakening of the giant ferocious beast, though monumental, would have played out similarly with or without Gowli's interference. He remembered Constantine and Swamp Thing interfering at the exact fraction of a second that prevented him from destroying an evil witch group ritual, too early to be helpful, too late to be perfect. According to the beast, God had tailored the Phantom's power to the exact need of the situation. How could God have known exactly how much power to allocate? Gowli felt a chill. Was everything part of God's plan? Had the beast's comprehension of light and darkness been intended from the start? He let the disquiet sit a moment, then decided to draw another prize. Worrying wouldn't help. Getting stronger would. 35. Section 35, Chapter 54. My shocker technology is the best in the world. August 20th, 2023. No matter how powerful the giant's calculations were, they only worked inside the DC universe. With the sole secret technique the giant ferocious beast had given him, Gowli could finally bring the Endless Magician Ring back to the Marvel Universe. Gowli planned to go back and take a look. He'd been in the DC Universe for almost a year. He had no idea what the situation in the Marvel Universe was now. Before, he'd held back because he'd been afraid of being hunted by the Ancient One. Now that he could bring the Endless Style, which granted magic immunity, even the Sorcerer Supreme would have to face facts. So the only question now is how much night magic my soul can hold, and whether it's enough to transform into Endless Style, he muttered. The giant ferocious beast had poured over 100 years of experience and techniques into Gowli. The soul secret technique felt second nature, as if the knowledge had always been in his bones. It was almost absurd. The giant had fabricated experience and training for him on the spot, and Gowli could summon those fake histories as if they were real. Still, experience without practice left him unsure of his soul's true night magic capacity. Wait until I draw the prize. The giant's cultivation method won't be bad, he decided. Then, grinning to himself, he thought, Should I pray to the giant ferocious beast when the prize comes out? He imagined, Big brother giant ferocious beast, bless me with something good. No, don't. Stop making weird associations. Gao Li shook his head and started the draw. The SS rank slot machine, hovering above his head, dissolved into motes of light. The prize that formed made Gao Li's heart leap. Praying to the giant ferocious beast had actually helped. On the system display, large characters declared, Shocker Cyborg Technology, the first version. He blinked. This was the Shocker biotech that created Kamen Rider 1 and 2, the classic Kamen Rider villains. Shocker's stated principle was always brainwashing after modification. In universe, its name stood for Sacred Hegemony of Cycle Kindred Evolutional Realm, and they built cyborgs to conquer the world. In practical terms, this meant Gao Li could turn himself into a Kamen Rider and had the tech to convert others into monsters. No wonder it was S-rank. One of Gao Li's biggest problems had been his lack of raw physical power before transformation. In his fight with the Ancient One, he'd had to pin her down with minor skills before safely transforming into Kamen Rider Kronos. That kind of crowd control might not work next time. Ancient One would prepare magical defenses. If Gao Li could apply cyborg technology, everything would change. The first riders derived most of their power from the modifications themselves. The transformation was mainly a protective suit and helmet, but even without the full transformation, they had terrifying strength, enough to stop a truck with one hand. That would compensate perfectly for Gao Li's weak physical body. But I'll need to research and improve it a lot, he cautioned himself. Fixing one weakness while creating another would be worse. The sorrowful origin of the Kamen Riders in the first gave him pause. He didn't want a tragic life or to become a monster. Worse, that version of the Riders needed regular blood transfusions. Unless a cyborg had near-perfect compatibility, like Honjo Takeshi's 400 cent, ordinary modifications would cause backlash. Without shocker blood transfusions, the cyborgs would die in pain. Ichimonji Hayato was an example. Gao Li didn't want that fate. Putting away the cyborg data, he tested the soul secret technique. He sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and carefully loaded the method. After measuring his soul's capacity, he discovered he could store roughly enough night magic for 3 transformations into Kamen Rider Wizard's Endless Style. The method used night magic to clone temporary drivers and magician rings, similar in principle to copy magic. As the Lord of Magic, Gao Li's adaptability to night magic let him cram such a huge charge into his soul. For most people, even one endless style would be impossible. Their souls would rupture. I feel like Sun Wukong, 3 life-saving hairs, he joked. 3 charges should be enough for now. He decided to reserve 2 transformations for emergencies and use the third for ordinary magic, keeping essentially full combat power while in the Marvel Universe. With that settled, Gao Li spent the next 49 days studying Shocker's biotech. He was curious, and he realized he could bring more than physical tech back from the DC Universe. Knowledge could be encoded into his soul as memories. After intense study, he had a working grasp of the technology, though he still didn't know how to improve it. Waiting to perfect it alone would be slow. It would be far more efficient to return and discuss improvements with Tony. During the research, he also used Fadian Group resources to build a safe house and a life support pod to keep his body alive while his soul traveled. It was a precaution. If his body decayed while his soul wandered, his physical form in the Marvel Universe would have long since rotted. Better safe than sorry. After arranging Fadian's future plans with Harley, Gao Li entered the safe house and lay down in the life support pod. System transmit, activate. His consciousness blurred. Like the first time he entered the 10,000 sky mirror, he felt as if he were floating in a deep sea. A light appeared above, and then, Circe, he seems to be awake. A little girl's voice whispered. Gao Li blinked and opened his eyes to see a small girl of 11 or 12. Her face and voice were of a child, but the look in her eyes was old, mature and tired, the kind of centuries-old legal lowly seen in anime. Chapter 55, Eternal X Captain America X Winter Soldier, August 20th, 2023. The woman the girl called Circe was an East Asian woman, gentle and composed. Gao Li, still disoriented, asked, "Excuse me, what happened to me?" Circe and the girl exchanged looks. "Sibel, will you tell him or should I?" Circe asked. You tell him. I'm not good at this. Cersei turned to Gao Li. We found you collapsed downstairs and brought you home to look after you. Oh, thank you. I'll repay you somehow, Gao Li said, trying to get his bearings. He paused. Aren't you worried I might be dangerous? What if I were a drunk or a thief? Cersei and Sibel almost laughed. They weren't human in the ordinary sense. Eternals sent to Earth by the Celestials 7,000 years ago. Mortal worry about them was misplaced. Since you've recovered, leave. Don't stay in our house, Sibel said brusquely. Of course, I'll go, Gao Li said quickly. He didn't want to drag Ancient One or anyone else into trouble. Before he left, he confirmed names. Miss Cersei, Miss Sibel, thank you. I'll send a gift to this address. No need, Cersei waved him off. We're moving soon. Don't bother. All right, Gao Li said. Good deeds deserve reward, but fine. Goodbye. Outside, the street looked like a film set. Vintage cars, retro buildings. Gao Li's jaw dropped. He hadn't landed in the modern Marvel universe. He'd landed in World War II. Did reversing time with Ancient One throw my body back in history while my soul followed the 10,000 sky mirror? He wondered. He explored for hours and confirmed it. He was in the 1940s. He'd assumed he could access his savings or contact Tony immediately, but in this era, he was undocumented. No money, no ID, no home. He went back to Cersei's place hoping for help, but what he found froze him. The building was open and empty. No lock, no furniture, nothing inside. What's going on? Is it haunted? Gao Li's skin prickled. Cersei had said they were moving, but this was drastic. He reminded himself he was a magician and could handle spirits, and he calmed down. The Marvel universe was full of extraordinary people. He just met 2 of them. There was one other thing he noticed. No sign of the Ancient One. Maybe she couldn't see the timeline he and Gao Li had been fighting in. If she was unaware of him in this era, that could be a blessing or a problem. To be safe, Gao Li ducked into an alley and used disguise and costume magic to change his appearance and test whether night magic functioned here. It did, the same as in the DC universe. He glanced at his system panel and saw a countdown. 331 days, 18 hours, 20 minutes. He clicked it, and a flood of information poured into his head. Each system transmission consumed accumulated spatiotemporal energy. It took roughly a year's accumulation to travel between the 2 worlds once. So he couldn't go back for a long time. He would have to conserve night magic. No money, no place to stay, he muttered. I can't just start stealing. He thought of the stories and films where delinquents harassed the protagonist. If that happened, he could play the victim and then turn the tables. The thought was still forming when 2 burly men, grinning in a deliberately menacing way, strode toward the alley. Their eyes were fixed on the narrow corridor where Gao Li stood. Gao Li's eyes lit up. This was literally a case of what you lack, you get. He put on an exaggerated, weary voice that had no acting talent behind it. Ah, I'm so tired, and all alone, he droned, and I happen to be carrying a lot of money. I'm so scared of being robbed. The 2 rough-looking men who had been closing in froze. Something about the kid was odd. Still, they'd been skimming cash by bullying people lately, and after a moment's hesitation, they decided to make this one an easy score. One moved in front of Gao Li, the other behind. Gao Li quietly wove a few tiny spells around himself and looked at them with eager anticipation. Come on, time to try out the unlimited combat self-defense technique. If you know what's good for you, cooperate and hand over everything of value, the taller thug said. Or else, who knows what might happen? They flashed ugly smiles and pressed closer. 2 young men passing by at the mouth of the alley heard the commotion and stiffened when they heard the same threat. This is daylight robbery. We should help him, the skinnier one protested. Bucky stopped him with a hand on his arm. Wait, Steve, we're outnumbered. We can't reveal ourselves recklessly. We have to pick the right moment. Steve blinked. Outnumbered? Are you not counting me? He swallowed the thought, but something nagged at him. Even without me, him and you would still be a match for those 2, right? Bucky and Steve were blunt with one another. It was part of why they got along. Bucky smirked. I'd still have to free up a hand to protect you. That's effectively a fighter short. With how you are, you wouldn't just stand there, would you? Steve opened his mouth, then shut it in exasperation. As they watched, the supposed victim gave a strange, impatient laugh. Ha! Scream all you like. No one's coming to save you. Both Bucky and Steve blinked. That didn't sound like a helpless man. The thugs looked taken aback too, and one of them, annoyed, swung a fist. "Ow!" he yelped. His punch met something unyielding. His hands swelled, and his cries turned into choking howls. Gowli hit him hard, hurled him to the ground, then rained down a few kicks. "Enemy! Fight!" he barked, wild with a kind of exhilaration. The other thug hesitated, stunned. Bucky and Steve looked equally bewildered. They'd gotten the roles completely wrong. "You let go of my brother. I won't be polite," the remaining thug growled. He lunged at Gowli, but Gowli only shrugged and punched him out cold, stopping short of further brutality as if by choice. Bucky and Steve stared as if watching a dream. Gowli, already squatting to search the two men's pockets, was pulling out nothing when Steve finally stepped forward. "Stop! That's theft and assault, criminal behavior. Please stop, or the law will take care of this." Gowli squinted at the speaker. The name and face were familiar. This was Steve Rogers, though gaunt and small, still recognizable. Beside him stood his friend, Bucky Barnes. The two heroes tensed, ready to act if words failed. They had seen how strong Gowli was. Together, they might not manage him, but they wouldn't leave someone they thought in danger. Gowli stood up, indignant. "Make me stop. Why should I? On what grounds? Are you siding with criminals and accusing the victim? Do you want to become their accomplices?" Steve and Bucky gaped. We're not siding with anyone. You were the one attacking them. It was I who was nearly harmed," Gowli interrupted. "Two tall, strong men with tattoos cornering me, and I was alone. Who was the stronger one here? Who was weaker? So me defending myself is a righteous act of self-defense, and yet you stand there accusing me of trying to get compensation. What are your intentions?" Bucky, quicker on the uptake, tried to interject. "Whatever the reason, they're unconscious and you're unharmed. Isn't this resolved?" Gowli's righteous tone hardened. "What nonsense. Just because the attackers failed doesn't mean they weren't attackers. Do you even understand attempted crime? If I hadn't been able to defend myself, who would have paid for my life?" He paced, eyes fierce. "Therefore, it's only fair I demand some compensation. If you won't let me take it from them, will you pay for them instead? You're so high and mighty. Why don't you pay?" "We didn't do anything wrong," Steve protested. "We tried to stop a crime." "Pointing fingers at a victim is psychological violence," Gowli shot back. "I've suffered severe psychological trauma. I have the right to demand compensation for mental distress. Think of a poor person being robbed while you stand on the moral high ground. Where is the justice in that?" Steve blinked, at a loss. Bucky looked like he'd rather argue with a forum troll than with this kid. After a beat, Bucky sighed and pulled out his wallet. "All right, fine. We'll give you some money." Gowli's mouth curved into a grin. He took the cash, then suddenly pressed down on their shoulders, eyes sliding to their pockets as if forming a new idea. "Since you're helping, why not help properly? I'm destitute, homeless. I don't know what I might do if I starve, especially with my skills." Steve and Bucky exchanged incredulous looks. Now he was openly threatening them. "How are you penniless?" Bucky snorted. "I just gave you money." "That's only enough for a meal, not a room," Gowli replied ominously. "Gentlemen, you don't want me to break into a house to sleep in because I have nowhere to go, do you?" "You'd be shot by the homeowner," Steve said. "We'd call the police." Gowli shrugged. "Thinking about it isn't a crime, and given my strength, how many would suffer at my hands before the police got here? If you won't help a poor homeless man, you forced me to take risks. If I die because you refuse to help, I'll haunt you with my thanks." Okay, Steve cut him off. "Just stop. I'll let you sleep on the floor at my place. Is that enough?" "Steve," Bucky protested, "you can't. This guy isn't trustworthy." Steve hesitated, then softened. "He looks like a teenager. I can't just watch him go astray. Besides, he held back when he hit the second man. He wasn't completely vicious." Gowli flashed a grin. His primary goal had been to pick at the two young men a bit, and more importantly, to fix his housing problem. Seeing Steve's decision, Bucky relented. "All right," Bucky said grudgingly, "but you don't do anything illegal while you're under our roof. We should introduce ourselves. I'm James Barnes. He's Steve Rogers. What's your name?" Without missing a beat, Gowli supplied a name. "Legendo Noah." He'd chosen a false name and altered his appearance to avoid attracting the attention of powerful figures like the Sorcerer Supreme and to minimize any risk of causing paradoxes in this era. A fake identity would also let him enjoy a little luck from two legendary young heroes he'd stumbled into. At Steve's small apartment, Steve indicated a spare room awkwardly. "There's a vacant room, but it used to be my mother's. She was a nurse and she died of an infectious disease. If you don't mind, you can take it. Otherwise, you'll have to sleep on the floor." Gowley's earlier swagger faded at the honesty in Steve's voice. He bowed slightly. "Thank you for your honesty and for taking me in. I'm sorry for threatening you earlier. I'll repay you." Steve waved it off. "Just don't go down the wrong path." Steve was in his 20s, but slight and serious. In his view, Gowley looked like a scrappy teen who liked to fight, someone who might struggle finding honest work in these hard times. Steve suspected Gowley's claims of compensation were unrealistic, and that a settled life was the safer option for him. Gowley, meanwhile, hadn't caught Steve's private thoughts. He was already thinking ahead. He'd never expected to be pulled back to the World War II period before arriving in the Marvel Universe. All his plans had been blown off course. Standing there in the modest apartment, his mind sketched a new outline. First, he needed to optimize the modified human technology so that, if he altered himself, the side effects would be minimized and his appearance wouldn't change much. Second, he had to build a Kamen Rider-style system to give himself independent protection. Relying only on magic would eventually leave him vulnerable. Both goals demanded the same thing: access to the most advanced technology available in this era. Whether it was performing surgical modifications or constructing a rider system, he would need proper facilities and tools. There was no other way. As the saying goes, a clever housewife still needs rice, just as you can't make high-precision chips without top-tier lithography machines. Throw Gowley into the Stone Age, and no matter how sound his theories, he couldn't conjure up light country technology from rocks with his bare hands. Even a genius like Tony Stark, stranded in the Middle East, at least had raw materials to build missiles, and so fashioned the Iron Man suit Mk1. Gowley was confident he could attempt similar feats, but since this plan involved modifying himself, the more complete the conditions he could find, the better. Once he accepted that, his path became clear. In World War II, there should be 3 places that could meet the conditions, he thought, running names through his mind. First, the United States Strategic Scientific Reserve. In the Marvel-era America, technology at that time was clearly ahead of what he remembered, so SSR could very well have the equipment he needed. Second, Hydra, which, if his memory served, had the Tesseract and had developed cross-era weapons like laser guns because of it. Third, Wakanda. He didn't remember many details, except that it was an isolated African country with an all-black cast in the film, and thanks to vibranium, scientific technology, decades ahead of the outside world. The more he thought, the clearer his plan became. The formula for victory was set. "Let's use the United States as a springboard first," he decided. "But how do I contact the Strategic Scientific Reserve?" He didn't know how to find the SSR directly, but he did know someone connected to it who was flashy and conspicuous. Gowley rubbed his brow. "I didn't expect to be tangled up with the Starks again," he muttered. "It's decided, Howard Stark. P.S. I hesitated for a long time between Noah Legieduo and Legieduo Noah. Both could work as first and last names, but Noah as a first name is mostly feminine, so I finally chose Leiduo as the given name and Noah as the surname." The next day, Gowley used the money Bucky had given him to buy syrup, baking soda, and a few glass containers. When Bucky came by to visit Steve, he found Gowley mixing a glass of orange liquid. "Good God, I didn't know we had a wizard in the house," Bucky teased, elbowing Steve. "Is he cooking up poison?" Steve shrugged. "I don't know. Looks like a chemistry experiment. But most of what he bought were food ingredients." Bucky laughed. "Maybe you hurt his pride yesterday, so now he's pretending to be an expert and doing chemical experiments with kitchen stuff." Before his teasing could go further, Gowley set the glass of orange liquid in front of them. "This is a drink," he said. "It tastes as good as Coca-Cola. I call it Fanta. Want to try?" Fanta had originally been created in Germany after Coca-Cola pulled out during World War II. For Gowley, replicating it was easy. Bucky bristled. I don't drink wizard potions. Gowley ignored him and handed the bottle to Steve. Bucky's stubbornness flared. Who said he didn't dare? It was made from food ingredients. It couldn't be poison. He snatched the bottle and gulped it down. Huh, it's really good. Not worse than Coke. Bucky smacked his lips, surprised. You made this? He asked Gowley. Steve, curious, took a bottle too and nodded. Yeah, it's really good. If you like it, Gowley said, I'll make a concentrated syrup. You two help me find channels to dilute it and sell it to the public. Price it lower than Coke and we'll split the profits 50-50. Bucky, whose mother had run small businesses, understood the economics and hesitated. If we price it below Coke, after paying labor and sharing profits, we might barely make anything. Gowley, who'd run a company in his previous life, waved it off. That's not the point. How much money can we make selling Fanta at the very start? It's not what I'm aiming for. Bucky was confused but saw the opportunity and agreed. All right, you give the recipe and you call the shots. They divided the work. Bucky used his mother's business contacts to reach small factories. Steve used his warm, personable connections to promote the product. A few days later, a simple distribution network was in place. People loved the new, affordable drink at first taste. Gowley used marketing tricks like free samples and staged queues, and Fanta quickly caught on throughout Brooklyn. Given that Fanta sold 3 million bottles a year in Germany, even during war, Gowley wasn't surprised by the scale of their local success. As he expected, the Coca-Cola Company noticed. Big corporations rarely try to crush a promising upstart right away. More often, they acquire it while it's still weak, bring the product in-house, and turn it into profit. Coca-Cola sent representatives to negotiate. Steve and Bucky, still half-dazed by the sudden attention, watched silently as Gowley handled negotiations, far more adept than they were. After several rounds of bargaining, Gowley sold Fanta to Coca-Cola at a very good price. Only then did Steve and Bucky understand what he meant by what I'm aiming for. All right, we have the capital to start a company, Steve said. Although Steve and Bucky had a 50-50 split, Gowley refused their later investments. With the money in hand, things moved quickly. He solved local problems with cash, completed all the paperwork, and established the Yggdrasil Foundation. He did hire the 2 young men, though, trustworthy hands for many tasks. The Foundation's first product was a household miracle that hadn't been widely released yet, superglue. Gowley replicated it quickly. During negotiations with Coca-Cola, he had also secured exclusive distribution rights for the Brooklyn area and the ability to add his own promotional gifts. So every Coca-Cola product sold in Brooklyn came with a tiny sample of superglue, labeled with clear instructions and the Yggdrasil name. The adhesive became a hit throughout New York. This tiny, incredibly useful item that could bond almost anything resonated with ordinary people and launched the Yggdrasil Foundation's reputation into the stratosphere. The Foundation's second product was even bigger, the microwave oven. For Gowley, it was another trivial reproduction, but it was an appliance that could benefit thousands of households. Compared to existing heating methods, the microwave was convenient and revolutionary. Put something inside, press a button, and wait. It dominated the home appliance market immediately. With just those 2 flagship products, the Yggdrasil Foundation had the capital to expand nationwide and a household reputation that terrified competitors. Military contractors were stronger in many technical aspects, but they were distant from everyday life. Yggdrasil had penetrated every home. That kind of fame was exactly what Gowley needed. The Foundation's explosive growth and market-grabbing tactics were somewhat unbalanced and carried hidden risks, but Gowley didn't care. He wasn't trying to build the most powerful corporation. Yggdrasil was his first stepping stone. Plenty of post-war inventions reshaped the world. He could create an organization on the scale of Zaibatsu or the Kugami Foundation. And at Yggdrasil's peak, Gowley made a splashy announcement. He would hold a press conference. Yggdrasil would enter the military industry. He would publicly denounce Stark Industries' weapons as trash and make a show of it. When it came to spectacle and generating buzz, no one had Gowley's instincts. Each element of the announcement was blockbuster material. Commercial companies rarely held press conferences. For an upstart known for household goods to declare it was entering the military field, and to target the industry leader directly was outrageous. Reporters across the country went wild. Even people who just wanted entertainment were glued to the unfolding drama. Infamy is still fame. Yggdrasil Foundation declares war on Stark Industries? Howard Stark read the headline with growing annoyance. He knew the Yggdrasil name. Their small products were clever and useful. Even if their tech content was shallow, the ideas were bright. Making those kinds of civilian items might be trivial for someone like Howard, but coming up with them first still required smarts. So Legio Noah, Yggdrasil's CEO, had some ability. But that level of competence in the civilian market did not translate to a realistic challenge in military technology. "Does Noah have a screw loose?" Howard muttered. "He has no sense of his own limits. This is pointless." Still, the public didn't understand the gap between civilian and military tech. If Stark Industries didn't respond, people might think Howard had backed down. Yggdrasil's reputation, inflated beyond its actual scale, gave some the illusion it might be a real threat. Howard realized he couldn't ignore it. The next day, major newspapers printed Stark Industries' response, penned by Howard himself. "I must say I admire their courage. Perhaps they believe that super-portable microwave ovens or high-capacity superglue can make a difference on the battlefield. However, I must remind them that victory on the battlefield cannot rely on appearances alone. It requires technological strength. The military industry is not a fancy facade. It requires deep accumulation and relentless innovation. Let me offer this civilian product company a wise proverb. Even a train on tracks cannot compete with a tank." Stark Industries has always believed that only true military technology can stand invincible in the fires of war. Howard's public challenge only fanned the flames. In an era starved for entertainment, the spectacle of two companies publicly clashing was irresistible. During work breaks and over meals, people debated it endlessly. The Yggdrasil Foundation trying to take on Stark Industries is just fantasy. Exactly. Stark has always led the military industry. Their tech and equipment are top-notch. You understand the military industry now? I think the Yggdrasil Foundation has its own strengths. Their products are very practical. Yes, they've had a huge impact on civilian technology. They could bring real innovations to the military field as well. Heh, Stark Industries' weapons are famous worldwide. What does the Yggdrasil Foundation have that's truly powerful? Given Stark Industries' reputation and resources, they're the likely winner. News of the rivalry even crossed borders. Stark Industries was a multinational star. Governments and the public watched every major development. With the world's attention, the Yggdrasil Foundation held its first press conference. The turnout of reporters rivaled a White House announcement, far larger than anyone had expected. Gao Li, speaking under the pseudonym Legieduo, took the stage and tore into the flaws of Stark Industries' weapons without mercy. "None of you are weapons engineers, so I'll put this in plain terms," Gao Li said. First, Howard Stark failed to account for optimal firing stability in his design. He favors visual effect over engineering practicality. He projected engineering blueprints covered in annotations. By combining aerodynamic calculations with shooting dynamics, we identified a clear risk of inertial instability in the firing system. The sight exhibits continuous drift during high-rate fire. That's a direct consequence of an unreasonable control system design. Most of the reporters below didn't grasp the technical details, but camera flashes popped like fireworks. This Leiji duo seemed to know what he was talking about. A well-matched rival made the whole spectacle far more thrilling than if the challenger had simply been clueless. Howard Stark had been a genius ahead of his time, but Gao Li, who brought knowledge from later advances, had no trouble spotting flaws in Howard's older designs. He pressed his critique for more than an hour, still not finished when he finally wiped his mouth. Next, let's move on to the second phase of our press conference. Reporters, still half baffled, dutifully recorded everything. Up to now, Legieduo had only criticized Stark's products. Was he finally going to show what Yggdrasil had to offer? "I'm pleased to announce that our team has discovered an aminoglycoside antibiotic, streptomycin," Gao Li declared. "It treats tuberculosis specifically. This is the gospel for ending TB." Silence spread across the room. Moments ago, they'd been hearing about military hardware, now biology and medicine. a reporter's eyes went wide. You said it treats tuberculosis? That single phrase snapped the room to life. Tuberculosis was untreatable in this era, a leading killer, once called the White Plague. Treatments had been limited to rest, fresh air, and nutritional support, with an efficacy below 25% and a horrifying mortality rate. Announcing a cure for TB was like announcing a cure for cancer today. The reaction was explosive. Yes, I'm confident, Gao Li said. Relevant papers will be published soon. Please pay attention. In truth, this was the achievement Selman A. Waxman would discover years later and for which he would receive a Nobel Prize. Gao Li, always pragmatic, preemptively appropriated the discovery. He'd already paid Selman handsomely via lawyers, framing the payment as an inheritance from a distant relative, several times the value of a Nobel, while hiring him to continue research and promising second author credit when the papers appeared. Gao Li had done similar deals with later inventors of the microwave oven and superglue. At a certain point, money bought more influence than reputation did. Through the rest of the press conference, Gao Li showcased more biological work, and the audience oohed and ahed. The next day's headlines were unanimous. Lei Jieduo had set the nation and the world ablaze. Alongside the excitement about his medical claims, attention focused on Howard Stark's quick rebuttal. In short, Lei Jieduo's view of control systems is one-sided. Howard fired back. Our thermal weapons use advanced inertia compensation and feedback control during high-rate fire. Those techniques suppress inertial instability. The problems he cites likely stem from external factors, not flawed design. Howard was furious. He had not expected this challenger to be so sharp. Begrudgingly, he had to admit a portion of Gao Li's critique was valid, though he rejected most of it. Gao Li, never one to let the matter rest, published a rebuttal the same day and set newspapers running extra copies. How do you explain the flawed aerodynamic system and ineffective recoil suppression? Your design sacrifices stability during high-rate fire. Howard countered, you don't understand the Thales cooling system and the advanced materials we use. They adapt perfectly to battlefield demands. Don't hide poor bolt and barrel design behind flowery language, Gao Li fired back. Your helical rifling isn't enough to cover fundamental weaknesses in bolt and barrel strength. The back and forth became a public spectacle. People loved seeing the once flamboyant Howard on the defensive. Meanwhile, Lei Jieduo's medical findings, starting with streptomycin, passed peer review and were quickly reproduced. His global stature rose dramatically. Although Gao Li had only criticized Stark's weapons and never offered full redesigns, he'd revealed a deep technical literacy that alarmed military leaders. The High Command wanted to know, who was this Lei Jieduo, and was he worth recruiting into the Strategic Scientific Reserve? Howard disliked Lei Jieduo, but pride kept him honest when queried. He's a bit short of me, he admitted awkwardly. Okay, maybe not that far off. He can stand shoulder to shoulder with me. He's one of the era's super geniuses. Gao Li's dossier landed on the desks of World War II officials, from both the US and German sides. His combination of military insight and biological breakthroughs was exactly the talent Hydra's leader, the Red Skull, John Schmidt, wanted. Spies compiled the information and sent it up the chain. The Red Skull's reply was blunt. A talent like Gao Li must be recruited or eliminated. New York, Brooklyn. Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes had received a large sum of money but didn't squander it. They donated most of it. What remained paid to renovate Steve's small apartment. Steve had no intention of leaving the place where he'd grown up. It held too many memories. Are you sure? Bucky asked as they stood brushing their hair in a mirror, steadying themselves like men. Yes, I've decided. I'm going to resign from Mr. Noah and try to enlist, Steve said firmly. Bringing Lei Jieduo back had been the first major turning point of his life. This decision felt like the second. You've already given so much to the military, Bucky protested. Why not stay with the Yggdrasil Foundation? Bucky's face showed his disapproval. Besides, you've been rejected before. Your physical condition. That's different, Steve shook his head. That money wasn't earned by me. It should go to people who need it. And even if I donate to the front, I can't just sit at home while others fight. I have to do what I can. Bucky sighed. He realized he wouldn't change Steve's mind. Once Steve was determined, nothing stopped him. Why do you want to resign with me? Steve asked. You gave all the money to Lehigh Barracks. You should stay at Yggdrasil. My father was a soldier, Bucky said quietly. After he died, the barracks took care of me. I want to repay them. I want to be like him. They exchanged a fist bump and left unspoken things unspoken. When they went to see Gao Li, they were straightforward. Mr. Noah, thank you for everything, Steve said. We've decided we want to resign and join the military. Please understand. Gao Li smiled. Don't be so formal. Call me Lei Juo, and if you join the military, we'll still be colleagues. There's no need to resign from your posts. I'll keep your positions open. They stared at him in surprise. No, Lei Duo, are you joining the military too? No, Gao Li replied. But I've been recruited by the Strategic Scientific Reserve. I'll be a military scientist soon. How amazing, Steve breathed. He'd first seen Lei Duo as a wayward kid. The changes in him were astonishing. Strategic Scientific Reserve? Bucky asked. I've never heard of that. Gao Li shrugged. I'm not completely sure either. It seems high level, very powerful. I heard it holds a high place in military research. Steve's face shifted. He looked embarrassed, as if he wanted to ask for a favor but couldn't. Gao Li grinned. Something you want my help with? Steve blushed and hesitated, then, with Bucky's encouragement, spoke. I've been rejected by the draft many times. If it's possible, could you help me? I know it's improper. Steve's shame flushed his face. He hated asking for favors. Gao Li understood and chuckled. Don't worry. Once I'm in, I'll grease the right palms, let the high command decay and fall with me, and then everything will be more convenient. Ha ha. Absolutely not, Lei Duo, Steve snapped. At that moment, the door to the adjacent reception room opened. A composed, capable woman stepped out, rubbing her temples. Mr. Noah, please don't talk about corruption so openly in front of me. I'm a military representative. Steve and Bucky both started. Gao Li introduced her. This is the military liaison, Miss Peggy Carter. Gao Li had used money to patch his paperwork. For business that had worked, but confidential military recruitment required full vetting. Until the military could confirm he wasn't a spy, they couldn't formally bring him into the Strategic Scientific Reserve, so they'd sent an agent to maintain contact. Peggy glanced briefly at Steve and Bucky, then said, It looks like you have visitors. I won't stay long. Take care, Gao Li said, waving as she turned to leave. He then looked back at Steve and Bucky. Let's talk about resigning again, and this time I'm not joking. If we put aside the whole spiritual thing, with your conditions, Steve, joining the army would only be a burden. You're my friends, and you've helped me. I won't lie to you. It's unpleasant to hear, but it's the truth. Bucky jabbed Steve and murmured, I told you. No, Lei Duo would never approve. Listen to how sensible he is. But Steve bit his lip, and Gao Li cut him off. Steve, first, you'll have a hard time passing the recruitment physical. Second, even if you somehow get in, do you want to be a liability to your comrades on the battlefield? And if your comrades leave you behind when you're wounded, have you thought about the psychological damage that would do to them? Gao Li's voice was cold, snuffing out the fire in Steve's chest. In the end, enlisting would only move you, but it would create a huge burden for others. Steve, I won't hurt you, but you need to give this up. Gao Li didn't know whether saying this would erase the future Captain America. He didn't care. Steve was his friend. He couldn't ignore him for the sake of history. Besides, with chance and butterfly wings, anything could happen. Steve might be struck down by a stray bullet before he ever became Captain America. I understand. Steve sounded defeated. He had spirit, but he wasn't a stubborn fool. He could see the sense in Gao Li's analysis. You're right. My idea was naive. I don't have your knowledge or your level of help, but I'll make sure not to be a burden. Bucky clapped Steve on the shoulder, sympathetic. Gao Li felt a pang of guilt for crushing a dream. There actually was a possible solution involving augmented humans, but the improved plan and hardware weren't ready yet. Gao Li didn't want to give Steve false hope. It's good you can listen, and I wouldn't recommend Bucky join the army either. Battlefield accidents happen all the time. Gao Li made it clear he was opposed and urged them to reconsider. If they insisted, he would do his best to help. After seeing them off, he drew the S-rank reward he had recently received. As the Yggdrasil Foundation expanded, Gao Li had gained influence and perks. Heaven and Earth, manifest, draw. The lottery machine spun and in a flash resolved into points. When the reward materialized, Gao Li examined it. There were two physical items, a desire driver and a core ID. He picked up the dark driver and the red and white Geats core. It was a belt from Kamen Rider Geats, future tech, and a ticket to the Desire Grand Prix. Not bad. At least he didn't have to develop the driver and core himself. They were ready-made. But without buckles, he could probably only access the basic entry form. Whatever. It's been a while since I got a new rider's power. Let's try transforming. Gao Li buckled the Desire driver around his waist and inserted the Geats core, but nothing happened. He stared at the belt, baffled. Then a piece of data flashed into his mind from the driver. Non-core ID binders cannot use this core ID to transform. This core ID belongs to Fu Xiying Shou. Gao Li's confusion multiplied. The system had just given him a reward he couldn't use. He swallowed his irritation and took a few deep breaths. Getting future tech at all was valuable. Even if the core was tied to someone else, he could study the hardware and reverse engineer it. If he lacked a core ID, he'd make one. If the buckles were missing, he'd fabricate them. He put the driver and core away and decided to leave work early. Gao Li lived in the same building as Steve, but he'd extensively modified and reinforced his unit. Anti-theft measures, structural strengthening, and layered enchantments. His apartment was effectively a small fortress. He kept it conspicuous on purpose. The target he was waiting for hadn't shown up, and he was getting impatient. If nobody took the bait soon, he joked to himself, he might as well join the Strategic Scientific Reserve. A few nights later, as he was about to sleep, one of his hidden wards was triggered. The big fish is on the hook, he probed carefully. A spy had infiltrated and was trying to coax his clone into joining Hydra. This shouldn't be the US military, Gao Li thought. If they wanted to draw me out, they'd impersonate Hydra to force me to reveal myself, not ask me to join Hydra. Gao Li confirmed the other party's identity and played along, feigning fear and agreeing to the spy's pitch. The spy was ecstatic. Bringing back a talent prized by Red Skull would be a major triumph. There's an old Eastern saying, a wise man adapts to circumstances. Mr. Noah is truly a rare mind. The spy flattered him slickly. Gao Li dropped the act and replied earnestly, to be honest, I've wanted to join Hydra for a long time. The spy's micro-expression training told him the truth. Gao Li really meant it. From the start, Gao Li had planned to use the United States as a springboard to Hydra. It was easier to ally with what most people call an evil organization without the moral complications, and Gao Li believed Hydra's tech was better than America's. In this universe, both the US and Germany's contemporary tech levels were higher than he remembered from his previous life, and Germany's possession of the Tesseract promised an even greater leap. That night, Gao Li left a clone behind to manage affairs and slipped out with the spy. Hydra spared no resources. The spy had high authority, and the organization's embedded channels in the US were used to get Gao Li out. Even Gao Li couldn't help admiring Hydra's infiltration reach. After sacrificing many operatives, they finally got him into Germany. Red Skull met Gao Li in person at Hydra headquarters and slapped a newspaper down in front of him. Mr. Noah, why is there no report of your disappearance from New York, but there are sightings of you at the Yggdrasil Foundation? The clone had tried to stay hidden, but couldn't hide from everything. Gao Li had already prepared a story. He waved his hands theatrically. Fake news. The Yggdrasil Foundation is a large enterprise. The US government must have sent someone to impersonate me to stabilize the company and seize control. They're shameless. Red Skull found the explanation plausible. He knew how to tell a true scientist from the imposters. He could judge by the caliber of their work. Mr. Noah, I hear you've always wanted to join Hydra? Exactly, Gao Li said with fervor. I've longed for your organization. The Strategic Scientific Reserve has been dragging its feet. It's wasting my youth. Only an organization like Hydra that stops at nothing for research can let my talents flourish. The US limits research with ethics and humanitarian restrictions. It's a disgrace to my genius. Gao Li launched into a 20-minute speech with such energy that even Red Skull felt a chill of recognition. Hydra sought scientists who would pursue truth without moral qualms, those willing to sacrifice anything for research. Such people, Red Skull knew, were often the most dedicated and gifted. Then Gao Li produced a stack of weapon designs that sealed the matter. "I designed this specifically for you," he said. "I learned the U.S. SPRO detected Germany's secret super soldier program and that you were their first success. So I designed a weapon to work with you and super soldiers, the GM-01 Scorpio assault rifle. Its firepower is immense, so the recoil is terrifying. It was a weapon drawn from Gao Li's memory of Kamen Rider G3's arsenal. Only someone with superhuman ability could wield it. Gao Li wasn't worried that Hydra already had a super soldier program. At this point, the Scorpio's tech wasn't beyond reach. More importantly, it proved his value. The design was clever and far beyond what American forces had on display. As Gao Li said, ordinary soldiers couldn't use such a weapon. Only a super soldier could, and that explained why someone in the US would present such a design so early. Red Skull examined the plans, impressed. "Very good, Mr. Noah. Your dedication and willingness to serve Hydra are clear." He extended his hand with a satisfied smile. "Welcome to our ranks. Hail Hydra." Gao Li wiped his hands in excitement and returned the handshake. "Hail Hydra." The volume and passion of Gao Li's performance made Red Skull nod in approval. It had the urgency of conviction, not an act. Soon after, Gao Li was appointed a senior scientist within Hydra, assigned to weapons and biology research. Because he had only just joined, the Tesseract and its highest secrets were off limits, but almost everything else at the cutting edge was available to him. Gao Li felt like he'd been given an open invitation to a limitless workshop. He spent a few days touring the base, noting the devices he wanted. Then, like a mouse in a granary, he began to steal. First, he used his duplication magic to make several clones. He equipped them with the two-piece appearance change and outfit change set, and set them to look like the innocent Hydra cotters and soldiers he'd seen on his rounds, perfect covers for surveillance footage. If they were caught on camera, it would only point back to ordinary Hydra staff. In fact, he preferred that they be seen. A small, satisfied smile crossed his face. Let Shocker take root inside Hydra, he thought. A month passed in a blur of thrilling, illicit research. During that time, Gao Li befriended the troubled German scientist Abraham Erskine, the father of the super soldier serum, and frequently consulted him. To avoid exposing Shocker's cyborg secrets, Gao Li only raised specific technical problems he'd abstracted from his own work. He'd hoped to optimize cyborg tech with Tony Stark back in his original world. Brainstorming with other geniuses had always been his plan. But history had other ideas. Tony hadn't even been born yet. Dr. Erskine proved a far better substitute than expected. Patient, brilliant, and the perfect research partner. In truth, that was at least the third reason Gao Li had been glad to get attached to Hydra. If Gao Li was luxuriating, Red Skull was in a foul mood. In his office, the dictator had just thrown yet another ashtray across the desk, item number 37 that month. "Investigate. Rescreen everyone. Find this Shocker infiltrator," he barked. His aides were silent with fear, reluctant to act. One finally stammered that internal screenings had already been done more than 10 times that month, sparking panic. Hundreds had been purged on suspicion, creating severe understaffing. Even the Führer had complained. Red Skull's fury only increased. Men had been caught on surveillance acting strangely. When interrogated, they swore innocence and refused to name a mastermind, even under torture. There was no doubt. Some foreign belief had been embedded so firmly that they wouldn't yield. Faith was Hydra's core, and now it had been corrupted. The only name that had surfaced was Shocker. "If we don't root out this parasite," Red Skull warned, slamming the table, "Hydra will rot from within. Hydra in name, while Shocker controls it." Someone floated the possibility that it was connected to Legendo Noah. Red Skull dismissed it. New members were monitored constantly. Noah had only been repairing the superweapon and chatting with Erskine, nothing else suspicious. So Noah was innocent. Gao Li, meanwhile, hadn't been doing weapon research at all. He'd been slacking off on the Scorpio project and stealing anything useful. Hydra's security was no obstacle for him. He opened a magic circle into the base and another to the outside, and moved equipment through. For heavy gear, he'd shrink it, send it to a prearranged warehouse, and enlarge it later. The whole operation was smooth and efficient. He built several sets of Kamen Rider G3 armor. G3 tech was the easiest rider system for him to assemble from Hydra equipment. His main body remained in the surveillance-filled lab, posing as an innocent researcher, while clones finished the armors. One clone changed its face to that of an unharmed Hydra cadre and stopped Erskine in a hallway. "Dr. Erskine, would you like to come with us?" the clone asked, adopting the other man's manner. Erskine hesitated. "You're Anderson? What do you mean? Come with us? Am I not already under Hydra's protection?" The clone smiled. "I am a shocker agent embedded within Hydra. Our purpose is to free you." He gave the organization's full, absurd name, the Sustainable Happiness Organization with Computational Knowledge Embedded Remodeling. Erskine's eyes widened when he recognized the abbreviation, Shocker. He'd heard rumors of this secret society turning Hydra upside down. He felt quietly pleased. If Shocker would help him escape Hydra, he would be grateful. "You sound better than Hydra," Erskine murmured. "I do want to leave, but security is tight. If it's just you." The clone glanced toward where another clone was suiting up and smiled. "Don't worry, soon the guards won't be able to spare you any attention." Then Erskine asked a trembling question. "Could you also help someone else?" "A young man I met, Legendo Noah. He's brilliant, barely a teenager, and it would be a waste for Hydra to keep him. I know rumors say he joined willingly, but from what I saw, he's a good kid, forced to play along. His talent would be useful to Shocker." The clone hesitated only a moment. "We'll consider it. Perhaps you two can work together later." When Erskine warned that involving Noah might be dangerous if the distraction failed, the clone put a finger to his lips. "Shh, it's begun." Back in the lab, Gowli leaned back with his eyes closed and projected his consciousness into clone number 2, who was clipping into a G3 suit. The clones, nearly independent like shadow copies, could act on their own, but Gowli preferred to handle critical moments himself. On surveillance, it would look like several Hydra cadres had entered a small room and emerged as fully armed Kamen Riders. He kept a contingency. He did not use the GM-01 Scorpio assault rifle or the GG-02 Fire Lizard grenade launcher he'd procured. He relied on the GS-03 Destroyer, a super high-frequency vibration sword, and could grab any thermal weapon if needed. The first patrol found them and opened fire. Gowli charged without dodging. The clone wanted to test how the G3 armor took hits. Hydra's Tesseract-powered weapons left explosive-looking burns on the armor, a sign their rounds behaved very differently from normal bullets. The shot hurt, but the suit held. When the soldiers tried to concentrate fire, Gowli didn't give them a second chance. He swept the destroyer in arcs. The high-frequency blades sliced through armor and limb alike. Bloodshed filled the corridor. Fortunately, Gowli had installed automatic censorship in the MDSS compound eyes, recoloring the gore and filtering the scent so no one monitoring would be physiologically affected. He picked up a Tesseract rifle to test it as a thermal weapon and kept moving toward the Tesseract chamber. Sirens wailed through the base and Red Skull was awakened. Half asleep, he demanded a report. How large were the enemy forces? His secretary hesitated, then delivered the impossible news. So far, only one intruder has been detected. One person? Red Skull felt as if he were still dreaming. Only one had breached Hydra headquarters, the fortress with the greatest force and firepower, and dared to walk inside alone?